Chapter 631. They knew what was good and what was bad. After a few rounds, the enemies that attacked Moon Manor did not pose much of a threat to Moon Manor other than leaving behind a large number of corpses. Their losses were negligible. Although Qin Yuran was not a tycoon, but she had a reputation and was rather wealthy, and the guards by her side were all of good standards. Many of them were given to her by the continent lords and nobles of the places she had toured, so their standards were definitely not low. If I die, I die. Poop you. And he used his name to mark the location. It was also a clever move. They were extremely familiar with each other, but Xiao Ian did not recognize them. Li Ran shouted loudly. His face was covered in sweat and dirt, but his expressionless face was currently radiating a strange light. Damn it. Li Ran did not say a word. He stared at Xiao Ian elegantly reaping lives. Xiao Ian moved with ease, gracefully cruising around the circle formation. Every time he touched it, he would take away a few lives. Strength could win over fear, but courage and conviction could win over respect. Xiao Ian's pupils suddenly dilated. An extremely chaotic light aura appeared in front of him like a multicolored light wall. Li Ran dragged his slightly lame leg as he ran back and forth. When he was young, his right leg was injured in a battle, and he did not receive timely medical treatment, resulting in his right leg becoming a cripple. Li Ran, who had lost his fighting ability, was chased out of the army and lived on the streets, before being saved by Qin Yuran. Qin Yuran had once jokingly said, "Everyone's name had the word Ran in it, how could she just stand by and watch? Wait till I become the White Sands Continent Lord, I will be able to gather all the heroes under the heavens." Ying said proudly. A trace of disappointment flashed in Li Ran's eyes. He knew that they no longer had a chance. Looking at Li Ran running back and forth with his crippled leg and shouting commands with a hoarse voice, everyone felt some admiration for him. After spending so much time together, everyone knew Li Ran's legs very well. As long as his right leg stood for a long time, he would feel a stinging pain. In severe cases, it would even become swollen. Having a tactical expert overseeing things was more useful than anything else. Although their individual strength was not weak, they were all put together. They were good at one-on-one combat and were not good at this kind of battle. Moon Manor wasn't suitable for defense. The terrain here was too open. And because it was located inside the White Sand City, its builders did not consider the problem of defense, which brought Li Ran a lot of trouble. The light aura that Xiao Ian released was not dazzling, but when it entered the light barrier, it was like a sharp blade cutting through tofu. Chi. A few heads flew into the sky, blood spewing everywhere. The guards tenaciously protected Li Ran in the middle. Li Ran's eyes were bloodshot. He was like a wolf, an old wolf that was on the brink of death. As soon as he finished, he leaped lightly and his body floated up. His speed seemed slow, but it was actually fast. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of the formation. He unsheathed his long sword in midair and a bright light sprinkled down. Li Ran calmed down after her excitement. In everyone's hearts, Li Ran was just a logistics officer who helped everyone manage their daily lives. Suddenly, his body trembled, his eyes staring fixedly at the black mass of figures behind Ying, like a black flood. Ah Xiang, focus on guarding. He stared at this group of wretched fellows. He couldn't believe that he was actually injured by these fellows. The guards cheered loudly. It was the first time they were a threat to Xiao Yi, and Li Ran stared at Xiao Yi's fleeting figure. Xiao Yi's movements were extremely deceptive, but Li Ran's battle experience was plentiful, and he knew that people had habits. This habit would be reflected in battles, and especially when there was no pressure in battles, the side that held the advantage would display even more of these habits. Li Ran only hoped that Master Meng Nen would hurry over, that way he could be free. His right leg had already lost all feeling, but it was good that it was not painful. The guards below roared and brandished their weapons, unleashing layers of light barriers. Li Ran's face was pale white. He suddenly realized that the Ying in front of him was the true enemy. He had initially thought that the disturbance was just a few pirates or bandits, but now he understood it was a civil war, a coup. And the one who started it all was most likely Ying. Fuck, this pighead, he dares to think? Li Ran's standard was high. His face was calm, giving everyone a reassurance. Everyone believed that the situation was still within Li Ran's control. Suddenly, a group of black dots appeared in the distant horizon. Xiao Yian's heart trembled. He bowed and replied, "Yes." As for the beauty's heart, would she be angry at him? He did not care. All of the guards focused and prepared to welcome the enemy. But when the enemy landed in front of the formation, the entire manor was in an uproar. In truth, Li Ran's heart was not as calm as his expression, but instead, he was filled with anxiety and worry. The strength of these attacks was constantly increasing. At the start, there were only 3 to 5 thieves that wanted to take advantage of the situation, but now, there was already a small-scale mercenary group. Why isn't Master Meng Nan here yet? As expected of the silver-winged swordsman, he is very strong. The tall, skinny man praised. Blood surged to Li Ran's face. He was like a gambler that had lost all his chips and was putting up a futile resistance. The enemy was actually able to predict where he would land. He was caught off guard and could only use all of his strength to brandish his sword. The tall, skinny man nodded his head. That is true. After images appeared one after another, reflecting in his bloodshot eyes that were at the end of his rope. Li Ran became agitated. He would definitely not agree to it. All of his fear was thrown to the back of his mind. The broken body was originally saved by the young miss, and to die for her, there was no better ending than that. Li Ran's leg was swollen like a carrot. The blood vessels were like earthworms. It looked extremely terrifying. He did not feel anything, and continued to limp back and forth. Everyone looked at Li Ran with respect in their eyes. Xiao Yian flew away once again. Li Ran suddenly said softly, "When I say someone's name, everyone attack that direction, do not hold back." Li Ran's throat was dry. He knew that they were in a life-and-death situation. He thought about the ladies in the manor, but at the same time, he thought about the young miss. He Ying would definitely not let the young miss go. If she were to fall into He Ying's demonic hands, she would become He Ying's plaything. The guards that were long prepared, without any hesitation, all of them gathered all of their energy and brandished their weapons. Qin Yu Ran's guards looked at each other, then at Li Ran. Rumble, rumble, rumble. He unsheathed the sword by his waist. The simple and unadorned sword was raised up high, like a flag. No one did not recognize the man in the center. He was the most powerful man in the entire White Sands continent, the commander of the Second Army, He Ying. "Master, he is here. We are safe now." The remaining people were roused. They only had less than 20 people left. At that time, everyone knew that they would not be able to escape, and instead became even more ferocious, since they were going to die anyway. Li Ran's face changed. He knew how powerful the silver-winged swordsman Xiao Yian was. He had seen Xiao Yian's dazzling performance a few times when he followed the young miss, but after personally fighting him, the feeling became even more profound. Without any defensive structures, his subordinates were just a group of scattered soldiers, adding a useless commander that could not fight. Li Ran laughed bitterly in his heart. To be able to fight to such an extent, it could only be said that they were lucky. Xiao Yian's entire body lit up with a light barrier. He slapped out with his left palm and groaned. His body flew out over 60 m before landing on the ground. His hair was disheveled, and blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. Xiang and Xiao Lin's heads flew into the sky. The blood that spurted out reflected the smoky figure. At that moment, he wished that his subordinates were a well-trained army. He wished that he was like the past, able to fight with his life on the line, able to gamble everything he had. He Ying arrogantly waved his hand, and a general stepped out and bellowed, "From now on, the defense of this place will be taken over by the Second Army. Everyone, disarm. If anyone disobeys, kill without mercy." Li Ran's eyes turned red. He roared, "Formation! Circle formation!" Li Ran licked his lips and thought in his mind, "Hold your position, bring 3 more men. Leader Li is right. Young miss has nothing to say to us. This life of mine is worth it." The pleasing sword technique ruthlessly reaped lives. Any resistance in front of the dazzling sword aura was unstoppable. The sword aura swept past 7 to 8 light auras, and finally broke. Li Ran suddenly bellowed, "Dong Bo! Xiang, pin him there, leave the right wing to Xiao Lin." We are saved. Xiaolin used. Ian, I'll leave it to you, no need to leave anyone alive. Ying said indifferently. The skinny tall man by the side had a faint look of ridicule in his eyes, causing He Ying to be enraged, and his killing intent soared. Hearing the guards scolding him, He Ying's face became gloomy. The main force of the Second Army was not by his side, but the vanguard unit. Until this time. This conclusion caused everyone to be surprised, but more than that, they were happy. After traveling for so many years, everyone had rich experiences, and knew that the day was not going to be easy. Li Ran was roused and shouted, "Prepare to face the enemy." Many of the guards were actually filled with disdain towards Li Ran. In this world where the strong were respected, how could a trash win the respect of others? But young Miss was insistent, and although Li Ran was unable to personally lead the troops into battle, but his daily management skills were not bad, and after a long time, no one said anything. The incoming pressure made them feel despair, and they had nowhere to hide. That's great. Li Ran's command was extremely methodical. But, against these small fries, the vanguard unit was more than enough. But they had nowhere to retreat to. He is truly risking his life. The ground was trembling, the houses were trembling, the air was trembling. He was old, crippled, and about to die. Bang, bang, bang. Weapons continued to be thrown into the ground, causing the servants and guards of the local families to be overjoyed. That is... He Ying's face revealed a pleased look. His strength is not bad, and he is even more obedient. You also know, the temper of the experts these days are not good. But after continuously pushing back the enemy's attacks, everyone started to admire Li Ran. It was rumored that Li Ran was an officer of a proper army, but Li Ran had never given a direct answer, so everyone treated it as a rumor. But now, everyone suddenly realized that it might not be a rumor. Everyone pat your chest and say, "How does young Miss treat us normally? Nurture an army for 1,000 days, use it now. We have received young Miss Grace, and today is the day to repay it. Anyone who dares to plot against young Miss will have to step over our corpses." The guards' faces gradually became serious, all of them revealing a determined look. They were all experienced people. Upon seeing the aggressive stance of the enemy, they knew that it would not be easy. Xiao Ian moved left and right. His movements were unpredictable. The entire process was completed in one breath, and Xiao Ian's movements were elegant. Without a trace of anger, it was an unspeakable joy to the eyes. Everyone thought in their hearts, no one had any disgust towards Li Ran's commands. Such a strong and unyielding man always made people excited. Their trust in Li Ran made the situation even more stable. At that moment, Li Ran also tried to get the guards and servants to start preparing, for example building some simple fortifications. Chapter 632. The truth proved that when women were stubborn, even famous generals could not do anything to them. Tang Tian, who had long been unhappy with Ying, waved his hand. Enemies. If not for the Swift Army's harsh and tough training, Aya would have thought that Tang Chou had a grudge with them. If not for the pink skull provoking a powerful enemy, they would be in a worrisome situation. If not for... The congealed protective barrier rose up from their formation, protecting them in the middle. The almost rigid fighting style caused He Ying's entire body to turn cold. The sudden change caused everyone to be shocked. He Ying was surprised but could not help but sneer. His position as the commander of the Second Army was not because of relationships, but because of his standard of commanding and fighting. He was extremely outstanding. So when he saw the enemies rushing out in a mess, he laughed, "So it's just a paper tiger." A few of the enemies saw that the situation was bad, and pounced towards Aya again. Aya was preparing to face the enemy when a small team rushed out from the side and cut through the middle of several enemies. 7. In at most 10 seconds, the protective barrier would shatter. He Ying stared at the black flood in shock. The two small teams were like two sharp blades, suddenly rushing out from the center, cutting the vanguard battalion in half. Bang, bang, bang. 100 men completed the tactical movements at the same time, all of them moving in sync. The entire process was smooth like flowing water. Although Aya was unconvinced, she stopped the rest. because she noticed that the skull unit did not have a general, and felt that it was the work of a lunatic. But their situation was not good, and they did not have the leeway to be picky. Aya struggled to hold on, using all her might to control every bit of energy, although the energy barrier trembled intensely, but it did not break. For 5. She had never met so many experts before. Tang Chao's black face appeared in Aya's mind. She immediately trembled and shouted anxiously, "Charge! Kill them!" She was at a loss. All of the enemies were powerful and unstoppable, and 2 of them were even silver rank experts. She did not understand why there were so many experts. It was too terrifying. Such enemies were definitely not people they could provoke. Am I going to die here? If they knew that I was the one leading the troops to escape, would they crawl out of their coffins in anger? The vigilance of the vanguard battalion, Qiao Ian holding his sword sideways. Outside the Moon Manor, the angry shouts gradually lessened and the mournful wails weakened. Amidst the violent explosions, waves of violent impacts came from the energy barrier, causing her to be somewhat stunned. Every employer was full of praises for their training, and many of the employers even praised that the Pink Skull's training was even more outstanding than a regular army. For the first time, she hated training. Not only her, but everyone in the Pink Skull felt like they were at the bottom of hell. It turned out that cultivation could actually cause fear to such an extent. If they didn't cooperate, it could be said to be a disguise, but if the commander didn't do anything, he would only be cannon fodder. Braking hard, turning around, getting into formation. Damn training. On the ground, there were already several enemy corpses. After being at a loss, Aya's heart was filled with despair. The team members around her were all red in the face and neck. Everyone was using all their strength. Aya raised her head and saw the enemy with a sinister smile on his face. At this time, the energy synchronization was completed. Tang Chou looked at Tang Tian. He was not clear of the situation, and did not know the relationship between He Ying and Tang Tian, whether they were friends or foes. In the past, Aya had always been proud of the Pink Skull's training. It must be known that the majority of the mercenary armies had very little training and were relatively undisciplined. For the Pink Skull to be able to last for 3 generations, it was directly related to the strict training. There's actually such a weird tactic in the world. In her vision, the enemies pounced forward, the weapons in their hands dragging out long tails of light. Aya controlled the energy of the small unit. She had to admit that the lunatic had some logic, although she could command the entire skull unit, but her control was not considered good. But in the situation of only 100 people, her control was outstanding. Encirclement complete. Tactic number 5. He immediately determined that this group of people was a group of people who fought alone. He had studied Bing's reports and analysis of the Sacred Saint Galaxy Army, and knew that there was a special name for such a small unit, Vanguard Battalion. Aya and the rest persevered. His eyes were blazing, his entire body releasing a cold, killing intent, his expression extremely focused. His gaze swept across. The entire situation was clear to him, every single detail was clear to him. This army, where did they come from? Inside White Sand City? How can there be an army that I do not know of? He Ying panicked. It was the first time he felt that the situation was out of control. Boss, don't be in a daze. Triangle Eyes shouted. His feet did not even touch the ground as he led the small unit to run. Tang Chou said without hesitation, the name Pink Skull, to Tang Chou, who was a stubborn and inflexible military general, was simply disgraceful. Even the name Skull Unit, to Tang Chou, was filled with the aura of bandits. How was it a proper army? But Aya did not back down on this point. It was created by her ancestors, and if it was changed to a completely unrelated name, she would not be able to accept it. Aya's eyes were filled with tears. She had always fought at the front. After the battle, I think I will be punished with more training. He Ying's face revealed a look of ridicule. His vanguard unit was filled with ferocious people. It would be good if the enemy did not cower, but once they did, their ferocious nature would immediately be aroused. As expected, the morale of the vanguard unit rose. As though they were injected with chicken blood, they pounced towards the enemy with bloodshot eyes. They could smell the scent of fresh blood. The enemy's attacks struck the energy barrier like a tide, causing the energy barrier to fluctuate intensely. Everyone's chest felt stuffy, the energy in their bodies surging. The ferocity of the attacks far exceeded Aya's imagination, causing her face to change. Experts. All of them are experts. Every one of the enemy's attacks were like a small unit, ferocious and tyrannical. He finally understood why the enemy's commander did not have any presence. It was because the formation did not require a commander. Skull Unit, Tactic Number 5. Almost instinctively, all the members of the Skull Unit were like loosened springs, rushing forward. Aya, who was bitterly suppressed and had no time to care about anything else, did not notice that the other teams on both sides were like spring blades, killing their way over. Now, 2 of the enemy's blood splattered all over the ground. The few lucky survivors' faces changed and immediately retreated. As expected of cannon fodder, they were about to clash, but they actually retreated. Damn it! In just 10 seconds, the vanguard unit was dismembered. Who are you? Ying bellowed. The Second Army is an important place. How dare you barge in? Every movement of an army was extremely important: how to attack, how to cooperate, how to synchronize energy, etc. But the most important thing was the commander. The commander was the backbone of the army, but in the army in front of them, the lady did not seem to have any presence of a commander. The brave and unstoppable vanguard unit did not even have any form of resistance. The individual strength that they were so proud of had no leeway to display it. Aya clenched her teeth tightly, her face revealing a blush. She led her unit to retreat. Only then did she realize that she did not notice the tactic movements during training. Only then did she realize, escape. After confirming his position, Tang Chou immediately entered his role. After 10 seconds, Aya regained her senses, because the impact from the defensive barrier had greatly weakened. Aya, who had a new lease on life, quickly raised her head. The situation in the battlefield gave her a huge shock. Aya had always thought so, until she met Tang Chou. Ying's shout caused the entire vanguard unit to be excited and immediately pounced towards the enemy. Cannon fodder. She was counting the seconds. It was not only Ying who felt cold. Every single person who witnessed the scene felt a chill down their spine. It was as if they were watching a gigantic steel meat grinder, continuously killing, without any sympathy, without pity, dull and dry, without any passion. When Aya heard Tactic Number 5, her heart twitched. This tactic was developed from the Pink Skull's Spring Loop Blade tactic, and Tang Chou had redesigned it with extremely harsh parameters. Regardless of the shame and anger in her heart, the past few days of training had been deeply imprinted in her mind. Her small unit was the most important part of the entire tactic, and she was the core of the small unit. That's right, she was currently the core of the small unit, but that lunatic had said that she was not a qualified commander and had almost incited a rebellion in the entire Skull unit. Aya had led the Pink Skull for many years, and everyone trusted her. Following that, the 6 small units swept across at a diagonal angle and once again split up. Ying was dumbstruck as he watched the battlefield. The vanguard unit that was continuously being dismembered, split up, and sliced horizontally. The enemy was like a spring knife. Every blade was extremely accurate, like a machine, without any emotions. Enemy, to Tang Chou, this definition was something that he was not clear of. As long as it was an enemy, in Tang Chou's eyes, there was only one outcome, and that was to destroy them both physically and mentally. That lunatic, what did he change the spring loop blade to? Tang Chou, who was proficient in analysis, upon seeing the analysis report, he had already started to think about how to deal with the Sacred Saint Galaxy army. How could he let go of the vanguard unit? Aya quivered. Her task at the moment was not to be in a daze, but to complete a small detour and enter the hinterland and complete an assault. Ying knew why they were unable to unleash their full potential. The enemy maintained an advantage in terms of strength. Their formation was extremely flexible, accurate, fast, and even rigid. Even if the vanguard unit was left with 3 to 5 men, the enemy was still methodically cutting and dismembering, without any fluctuations, as though they were a perfect machine. It's too humiliating. She was embarrassed and angry. She wanted to scold out loud. In her entire battle experience, it was the first time she had to turn and run. From her grandfather to her father, they had always taught her to be as brave as a warrior and to lead the charge. The vanguard unit beside him all reacted, as though they were facing a great enemy. Xiao Yian could not care about Li Ran and the rest, and landed beside He Ying. He Ying sneered, although his vanguard unit did not have many people, but every single one of them were experts, and their fighting strength was not inferior to a proper army. Against such cannon fodder, it was definitely like cutting vegetables. Because of this tactic, the entire unit had suffered. Chapter 633. Xie Yuan replied sternly, "The swift army flowed down the streets like flowing water." If it was said that the skeleton army was able to weave in and out, causing people to be dazzled, then the swift army displayed a completely different aura. The swift soldiers did not even look at them, and like flowing water, they rushed past them and surrounded the entire manor. From the looks of it, it was effective. Although the word kill came out of nowhere, but the swift army had trained for a long time and displayed its might. All of the soldiers instinctively activated their energy, and light auras suddenly lit up. Xiao Yian's face turned ashen. Just at that moment, a blurry figure suddenly appeared between him and Yin Yan. It was a tall and skinny man. The swift's wings suddenly lit up with silver flames, and Yin Yan's speed continued to increase. Kill! Xiao Yian's spirit was about to leave his body. For the sake of escaping, he had long activated all of the energy in his body. But the speed of the swift was even faster than his silver wings. Tang Chou did not feel much joy towards the victory. The opponent was not a famed general, and was unable to pose a threat to him. Even for the victory, Tang Chou felt that it was not strong enough, and in the entire process, the vanguard unit did not pose any pressure to the skull unit. In other words, Tang Chou felt that the opponent was too weak, and that the victory was unable to truly prove his own tactics, and whether or not they passed. A gentle light shield appeared in front of Yin. Ever since he saw the skull unit's proficient tactics, Tang Chou immediately realized that the skull unit's methods were completely different from the swift army. But when he personally witnessed the battle, he saw the swift army and the pink skull being reborn in his hands, and even He Ying, who held great authority in the White Sands continent, was suppressed by him. He suddenly understood that the disparity between the two parties had widened once again. Although Aya was not willing to admit defeat, but her heart was clear. "Shut up!" Tang Chou snorted, and looked at eldest young noble unkindly. Eldest young noble was shocked, as though a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. His heart turned cold. He then remembered that the opponent was not someone he could provoke. In the blink of the eye, he disappeared. It was not only Tang Chou. Everyone else looked at Tang Tian. When they saw Tang Tian's face, they were all shocked. They had never seen Tang Tian's face so gloomy and terrible. "Stop him!" Ling Xia was the first to react and screamed. Since he was a lab rat, he should do his part as a lab rat. Aya had her own philosophy of survival, which was the mercenaries' philosophy of survival. She still thought that the skull unit was beneath the swift army. Huala huala. But the skull unit was extremely proficient in small-scale coordination, and was even more proficient in protection, harassment and pursuit. They were practically made for cities. There were obstacles everywhere in the city, with all sorts of structures floating in the air. It was difficult for armies to display their abilities, and that was the skull unit stage. Tang Chou was quite satisfied with the results. The vanguard battalion was very strong, but it was a pity that they were not good at teamwork. It was a waste of a group of experts. Tang Chou did not think much of it. With a clear cry, a silver light flew out of the array like an angry arrow. Within the silver light, there was a completely translucent swift. Just that at the moment, Xiao Yian did not have the strength to appreciate the exquisite swift. An unprecedented sense of danger enveloped him. Inside the swift's small body, it contained an extremely terrifying energy. Bai Yu sighed lightly. "I also do not know if introducing Xie Yuan to him was right or wrong. It has only been a few days, and the swift army has completely changed. Even as a famous general, I am unable to do that." In the empty circular region, there were blood and broken limbs everywhere, There was not a single living thing. He looked at Tang Tian. Bai Xiao was also speechless. In his eyes, Meng Nan was becoming more and more unfathomable. The strength that Meng Nan had displayed in the past made him respect him, and also greatly motivated him. At that time, the two of them were still at the same stage, and Bai Xiao was extremely confident in his own talent. He felt that as long as he worked hard, he would definitely be able to catch up and even surpass Meng Nan. Tang Chao's eyes suddenly lit up with flames. Finally, is it starting? And after that, Tang Chao's appearance also caused Meng Nan's back to reveal the tip of the iceberg. But just the tip of the iceberg was already enough to shock people. The silver-winged swordsman unleashed his absolute strength. His sword blade swayed. Clang, clang, clang. Countless of silver sword wings appeared on his back. His speed suddenly increased, becoming like a silver light arrow. The skinny and tall man spat out a mouthful of blood. He flew out and was grabbed by Qiao Yi, and Tang Chou retracted his gaze and ignored the eldest young noble. He did not know He Ying, and the mission that he had received was to fetch Qin Yu Ran. Furthermore, he believed that the master did not have the mood to care about He Ying. They even forgot to breathe. But the skull unit's tactics were too immature and shallow, so Tang Chou might as well create a brand new tactic for them. But Tang Chou had never come into contact with such tactics before, and needed to fumble around. Such an unforeseen event caught everyone off guard. From this point, it could be seen that the Swift army had greater potential, because from the start, Xie Yuan had used a proper army's method to create the army. Qiao Yi's face changed. All the hairs on his body stood. He was being locked on. Tang Chao's expression was cold, as though the one who won was not them, but the other party. That sentence struck a chord in Bai Yu's heart, and he nodded his head. That's right, that's right. Luckily he is our friend, and not our enemy. Whoever provokes him will definitely not be able to eat or sleep in peace. This time He Ying is going to be unlucky. Bai Xiao laughed bitterly in his heart. Without the competitive spirit, his state of mind was much more relaxed, and laughed bitterly. At least he is our friend, and not our enemy. Xie Yuan, occupy the manor, and begin to set up defenses. We're finished. But as time passed, he realized that the gap between him and Meng Nan was getting bigger and bigger. This freak was constantly improving at a jaw-dropping speed. Tang Chou, who had set his sights on surpassing Master Bing, how could he be overjoyed over such a small victory? But Aya's face was as white as paper. The blood in her chest was churning, but she endured it. She had experienced many battles and killed many people, but the scene in front of her still made her feel uncomfortable. Aya was at a loss, but very quickly she regained her senses. She suddenly realized the most important fact. They had completely annihilated the Second Army's vanguard battalion. Xie Yuan also reacted. His face changed, and he bellowed, "Kill!" As expected. The other people beside her were all gasping for breath, many of them holding onto their knees. The entire skull unit was gasping for breath. It was the first time they were using such a tactic in a real battle. There was no need to consume too much energy, and there were too many flaws. But very quickly, the gasping quickly disappeared. No one cared about it, as everyone stared blankly at the battlefield. The expression on her face froze. The pink skull was famous among the mercenary armies, and had a good reputation among the customers, but she was clear of the pink skull's strength. They might be able to fight against ordinary bronze armies, but if they were to face a silver army, they would definitely not have any chance of winning, even if it was just the vanguard battalion. She was not the only one affected. Everyone else was affected, and their synchronization rate dropped greatly. If such a situation were to occur during training, they would be scolded by Tang Chou, and even be punished with additional training. It was so strict that it made people's hair stand. He suddenly grabbed onto Master He Ying's arm, and with a roar, he soared into the sky. In the distance, the Bai family uncle and nephew were dumbstruck. Qiao Yi's gaze swept past the swift soldiers in front of him, his heart trembling. He held onto Master He Ying's arm, and could clearly feel the master trembling. He became even more shocked. Although the master's temper was not good, but he was extremely strict in managing his troops. Ooh! The lunatic definitely treated the skull unit as a test subject, and was trying to find something that matched the identity of a famous general. No matter how tough the training was, even if the lunatic's ideas were all strange and wonderful ideas, but she still took the lead and did her best to complete the training. Everyone's expression immediately became extremely ugly. Upon He Ying's escape, the situation immediately took a turn for the worse. Especially Ling Xia and eldest young noble, seeing the cooked duck fly away, the frustration in their hearts was obvious. The distance between both parties quickly decreased. When Tang Chou placed more time into the skull unit, Aya did not understand, but she knew that it was a good thing. Although the lunatic was crazy, but he was definitely a famous general. A famous general's time was more precious than all of the mercenaries combined. The lunatic would definitely not waste time on pointless torture, even if the training looked like torture. This sort of solemnity and solemnity itself had the power to intimidate people. The silver swallow smashed into the light shield, but the expected explosion did not form. The light shield and the silver swallow burst like a bubble, and with a popping sound, they disappeared. Why didn't you capture him first? Do you know how to let him go? Eldest young noble could not help but ask. Tang Chou was the only one who appeared to be calm, and in truth, he was extremely calm. The battle that she had just experienced was like a dream. She had not understood the battle, but it seemed to tell her that all of her guesses and thoughts were not completely correct. Tang Tian gritted his teeth and spat out, "Honorable Martial Temple. I said, let there be light." Aya gasped for breath. After continuously sprinting and killing, her physical strength had been exhausted to the limit. Compared to training, the exhaustion in battle was more than 30%. Blood and broken limbs were flying everywhere, and in such an environment, it was extremely difficult to maintain a calm state of mind. Is this the battlefield? He Ying's face was as white as paper. He looked at the army in front of him in fear. He did not dare believe that the White Sands continent actually had such an elite army. In the dead silence, suddenly, someone started to retch. Very quickly, it was like a fuse. Many people felt uncomfortable and started to retch. When the last swift army swept past, Xiao Yi was overjoyed. Chance. Damn it. Other than the sound of their armor, there were no other sounds. The entire army was like a soundless giant beast. Everyone's footsteps were in sync, as though they were one person. Xiao Yi squinted his eyes. The swift army was a proper army, and they wielded heavy weapons, moving in a wide manner. That's impossible. Do perverts always make people feel despair? A stern voice sounded out in the entire White Sand City. Chapter 634. Everyone had heard of Screw's story. But when they directly faced Screw, the shock they received was much greater. Especially when the hoarse and hysterical Southern Cross Army advance resonated throughout the entire laboratory, causing everyone's eyes to turn red. Xiao Rant's face turned frosty. So you are here to make fun of me? With that reminder, more people immediately thought about it. The Zanbato moved downwards, the blade tip pointed straight at Xian's nose. I will be in charge of the construction plan. Someone raised his arm and shouted. To better protect the young miss, this sentence immediately moved Xiao Ran. She hesitated for a moment, but still walked over and grabbed the door. For Screw! Everyone replied in unison. I remember, the big ice coffin. Someone suddenly shouted. Impossible, spirit origin is harmless to spirit generals. Someone immediately refuted. I will be in charge of the spirit origin test. Someone shouted. But everyone did not give up. They clenched their teeth and continued. After persevering and working hard, they finally found the reason. From the 6th day of spawning, after using the remnant spirit to nourish for 7 days and no more than 12 days, it would form a spirit origin. The entire Blood Meridian's laboratory was under immense pressure, and now, they had finally researched out the most important result. That's right, this result would become the most important result of the entire Ursa Major constellation. Keep it? Xen said without hesitation. Of course keep it. Think about it. The Master of the Door is the creator of the spirit cards. He is a powerful figure, but even he has to pay his respects to Hein Van Sant. Legend. That is a true legend. This door, Oh no, this square shield is a legendary treasure. Since Hein Van Sant is a classical grandmaster, I have even thought of a name for this square shield. It shall be called Classical Undying. It sounds very high class and cultured, with the aura of a noble family in the future. It shall be our family's treasure. Exen did not feel ashamed, but instead felt proud, and said happily, Xiao Ran, although you have a big chest, but in terms of foresight, you have to look at me. That door looks like a good thing. After so many years, it does not even have any rust. I slashed once, tsk, but it did not even leave a mark. Such a good thing, to leave it here is a waste. Ayo! My God! I surrender! Female hero, spare me! Hey, I have already surrendered. Why are you still hitting me? Everyone moved into action. Without saying a word, Xiao Man picked up her zanbato that was the size of a door and sneered, Do you think it's so easy to take advantage of me? Eat my saber first. Finally, it was about to begin. Xen quickly patted his chest. Of course it's for Xiao Ran. Old Man Fei cried tears of joy. The Blood Meridian's laboratory had already sunk into a frenzy. All these weird-tempered old men and old ladies, some of them sat on the floor foolishly, laughing foolishly, but even more of them hugged each other, crying, laughing and jumping. Xiao Man was filled with disdain. I never expected you to be such a person. Even the trash was not spared. Seems like the Southern Cross Army's culture isn't that good. You must have done many sneaky things in the past. For screw! Someone shouted. Fortunately, my lord found a mysterious light egg. This light egg contains a rich soul source, and this soul source can heal soul injuries. If I don't test the power of this square shield, wouldn't it be a waste of Xian's efforts? Xiao Ran smiled like a flower. The square shield in her hand danced like the wind. In the end, everyone quickly discovered that these light eggs didn't have a soul source. This discovery made everyone despair. Could it be that the artificially bred light eggs didn't have a soul source? Repair him! Someone shouted. Such a warrior was worthy of everyone's respect. Old Man Fei shouted, Does everyone still remember what Master Bing said? Xiao Ran, you are currently only using half of your strength. Xiao Ran, you are from the Ophiuchus army. Without a shield, you can only unleash half of your strength. If you have this indestructible shield, it will be like adding wings to a tiger, and you can better protect young miss. The Blood Meridian's laboratory had always been spending a huge sum of money, but there were no truly heavyweight results. Compared to them, the Mechanical Weapons Laboratory had already become the true core of Ursa Major Constellation. In the internal department of Ursa Major Constellation, there had always been some criticism towards the Blood Meridian's laboratory. If not for Tang Tian's insistence, the funds for the Blood Meridian's laboratory would have been cut again and again. I will follow up on the concoction of the medicine. After that, they found a way to stimulate the blackworms to produce more eggs. Old Man Fei was extremely excited. Repair him! Even more people shouted. When everyone was done venting, Old Man Fei stood up and clapped his hands, attracting everyone's attention, and the room gradually quietened down. Inside the ice coffin, Screw's body trembled slightly, as though he had heard someone calling out his name after thousands of years of smoke. For the sake of finding a method to stimulate the blackworms to produce eggs, Old Man Fei was also ruthless. Everyone sent out a few blackworms, and everyone used different methods to test them out. Luckily, the blackworms had extremely tenacious life force, and there was no need to worry about them dying. Just that, to drag a big door into the battlefield, the scene made Xiao Ran feel awkward. Won't it break him? Someone raised an objection. It was their first batch of large-scale nurtured spirit light eggs, and when the rows of light eggs released a dim light at the same time, the unique undulation of a spirit origin filled the room, causing everyone to be ecstatic. For who? Xiao Ran looked at Xen suspiciously. If you have guts, then you have to take a beating. Wasting is not a good habit. Cough, cough, cough. Xen coughed lightly, and immediately changed the topic. Young Miss sees me like that, Xiao Ran, do you see me like that too? Think about it, who am I doing this for? With that, he immediately threw out something. Bang, it smashed into the ground, causing the dust to fly up. It was the big door that was torn down. Spirit light egg. My knee hurts. Our family? Xiao Ran's face darkened. That was everyone's thoughts. Everyone looked at each other and saw the seriousness and determination in each other's eyes. What about the window frame? You even tore that down. If not for young Miss stopping you, you would have even knocked the brick down. Xiao Ran's face was filled with disdain. I will be in charge of strengthening the light egg. No, we must save him. Lady Mu wiped her tears, her voice choked. Hee, if you don't have guts, you will take a beating. I think they are Master Bing's former comrades in arms. I am truly curious, what will Master Bing's comrades in arms be like? Many pairs of hands were raised up, forming a forest. An indescribable emotion surged in everyone's heart, every face brimming with fighting spirit and determination. The missions were quickly distributed, and the entire power of the Blood Meridian's laboratory was completely consolidated. Thus, the entire Blood Meridian's laboratory started to search for a method to nurture the spirit light egg, which was an extremely bumpy process. These creatures that they had never seen before were not difficult to raise. But after feeding them for a period of time, they realized that the black worms did not ovulate. Everyone was startled. Axen saw the cold light flickering from the Zanbato, and his face turned pale. Wait. I have something. Everyone tried all sorts of methods, but to no avail. Until one day, Lady Mu accidentally sprayed her perfume on the black worms, and the next day, the black worms laid eggs. Everyone then saw the light of hope. Everyone deconstructed the composition of the perfume, and very quickly obtained the most effective ratio. Axen laughed. The barracks is my home, we are all from the same family. Io, you really hit me. I gave you a treasure and you still hit me. It's for your own good, a real battle drill. What are you doing? Kneeling if you can't win? For the sake of allowing Screw to be repaired earlier, Bing specially left the ice coffin in the Blood Meridian's laboratory. For the sake of placing the ice coffin, he specially transported a large amount of ice cubes from the ice plains and built an ice room. A man should kneel with gold. How can you be so spineless? I've misjudged you. Axen swallowed his saliva with difficulty. For the sake of tearing down the big door, he had spent a tremendous amount of effort, and naturally knew how heavy the door was, but in Xiaoman's hands, it seemed to be weightless. I am in charge of testing the remnant spirit. Another man raised his arm and shouted. The heavy metal door was like nothing in Xiaoman's hands. 3 days later, they arrived at a canyon, and when they reached the end of the canyon, a crack that was suffused with blue light appeared in front of them. Furthermore, Master Bing said it himself. This sentence immediately dispelled everyone's suspicions. He glanced at Xiaoman from the corner of his eyes, seeing that although Xiaoman's face was gloomy, but the chill in her heart had lessened, he relaxed and immediately said, I have spent a lot of effort to modify this door. It is definitely suitable for Xiaoman. Look, this door is hard to break, isn't it the best shield? Although it is slightly big and heavy, but to Xiaoman, is that a problem? Of course not. Hearing the screams and chasing sounds, Xie Shengguan, who was concentrating on calculating, raised his head, his face revealing a smile. Xiaoman's face relaxed. She felt that Xian's words were reasonable. The door was truly the best shield. That's right. That big ice coffin. In the current Ursa Major system, the position of spirit generals was extremely important and could not be lacking. Bing, Tang Chou, the entire Ursa Major constellation's fighting system, was all due to the two of them, and they were the most important core members of Ursa Major constellation. And their nature as spirit generals made it so that once they were injured, they would be incurable, and to Ursa Major constellation, that was the biggest hidden danger. That's right. You must definitely cure him. Axen stared at the blade edge, his entire body froze. He raised both of his hands and said, Even if you give me 10 guts, I will not dare to make fun of the beautiful and intelligent Xiaoman. Go, let's go carry the ice coffin. We did it. Under the gray sky, the tall building behind them gradually disappeared. But the tall building was already beyond recognition. The big door had disappeared, even the frame of the windows had been forcefully torn down, The entire building was so clean that not even a piece of paper could be seen. The seal has already loosened. Once we open it, we can go out. We did it. When everyone opened the ice room, they saw that the screw inside the ice coffin was still mumbling something, causing everyone to quiet down. Xiaoman waved the metal door. She felt that it was extremely smooth, and her heart was rather fond of it, but when she saw the line of words on the door, she muttered, "What about the words on the door?" The young lady's face was filled with unswerving determination. She stared at the light slit and muttered. They named the light eggs as spirit light eggs, and in this period of time, they had done a lot of research on the spirit light eggs. Very quickly, they realized that although the spirit light eggs could heal spirit injuries, but the amount of spirit origin contained in each spirit light egg was too little. And once the eggs hatched, the spirit origin would disappear. But he knew that it was not the time to be in a daze, and said with a glib tongue, "Look, I specially added a handle at the back. Although it is slightly square, but square shields are not uncommon. This big shield truly belongs to you, Xiaoman, a big chest with a big shield, cough cough. Finally, it's starting." Chapter 635. If it wasn't for the series of training suggestions that he gave to the blue dwarves, Song Didi would have thought that he was an ignorant and incompetent fellow. It had always been a soul puppet that acted as a human's assistant. He might not be the first human to act as a soul puppet's assistant, but a silver-ranked general would definitely be the first to act as an assistant. If all of this was done by the Sword Forest stronghold. Bu Zifei heaved a sigh of relief. Seems like my life is safe. But then, a complicated feeling rose in his heart. He actually became the assistant of a soul puppet. He laughed bitterly. A moment later, Yang Ziqing came back to his senses and asked anxiously, "What happened? Why is there a blue tide?" Bing leisurely puffed out a smoke ring, but his gaze was slightly cold. "Assemble the entire army and prepare to depart. Sir wants to see you." The soldier in charge of guarding him opened the door. Yang Ziqing's head felt as if it had been punched heavily, and he was somewhat dazed. These continents were the neighboring continents of the vast star continent. After a long time, he slowly came back to his senses. These continents had already sent people over, which meant that they had been waiting for the news for a long time. It had only been 3 days since he had received the battle report. It was as if a bolt of lightning had lit up his mind. The other party was prepared. "Lord, it is not the blue tide. There are only 1,000 blue dwarfs." But they were extremely cunning. They suddenly rushed out from the sea of light and threw their javelins, causing the 22nd Army to be caught off guard, and suffered heavy losses. After they succeeded, they disappeared. Yes. Bu Zifei obeyed. Upon accepting the reality, he no longer had any distracting thoughts. If they do not surrender, how do we handle them? Many of them have families in the vast star continent. Sword Forest stronghold. Yang Ziqing calmed down and said with a determined expression, "I must go. If they don't surrender, lock them up first. Oh, we can let them do some hard labor." Bing thought for a while. Those with families, don't try to persuade them to surrender. After a period of time, we will send people to the vast star continent to bring their families over. Were they finally going to make a decision? Well, have the other continents received the news? Yang Ziqing's voice was trembling. The other party already knew that they would win. The first place he thought of was the Sword Forest stronghold. He could faintly see a net that was faintly discernible. Song Didi regained his senses after a long while. He was now in awe of the Sword Forest stronghold's commander. Bu Zifei's heart trembled. He knew that the time to decide his life had arrived. It was possible to die, but it was also possible to live. Even though he had gradually calmed down over the past few days, his heart still palpitated slightly. He forced himself to remain calm. A defeated general has no right to choose. "You made the right choice," Bing said. "Your current mission is to persuade them to surrender." Suddenly, a subordinate rushed in with a hurried expression. When faced with such a situation, he realized that he was not as brave as he had imagined. Yang Ziqing muttered to himself, his eyes filled with curiosity and palpitation. Song Didi looked at the report in front of him. He scratched his head in disbelief. He actually won. Bu Zifei never thought that there would be a day where he would be captured by the enemy. After 3 days, he gradually recovered from his daze and fell into fear. The continuous destruction of 2 silver-grade armies immediately caused the vast star continent to fall into an extremely dangerous situation. If the other continents knew about this, they would definitely add insult to injury. Master, the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light has been attacked by the Blue Dwarfs. The 22nd Army has suffered heavy losses. Bu Zifei's heart turned cold. The enemy had long planned this. He was extremely calm. He wasn't too dissatisfied with this defeat. After all, his opponent was stronger than him. Putting aside the strange idea of using one's own strength to decide the victor, from the start of the battle, he had lost the initiative. And after that, he had fallen into the enemy's trap. The commander's art of commanding had far surpassed him. The pair of eyes behind the lingering smoke seemed to be able to see through Bu Zifei's thoughts. Bing said indifferently, "Since ancient times, the strong are the teachers. I defeated you, I am stronger than you, and you are teaching me. Isn't that right and proper?" Everyone's faces lost color. Bu Zifei's heart trembled. His mind immediately became clear. That's right, I lost to the enemy. What's the point of being proud and arrogant? After thinking it through, his eyes became clear again. This subordinate is willing. Song Didi then understood. The Sword Forest stronghold had long thought that they would win, and the mission given to them was to reap the rewards after the victory. With the first battle approaching, Song Didi was excited. What plans does Mr. Bu have for the future? Bing puffed out a smoke ring and asked casually. With the precious Bright Village Regiment, they could only defend, and definitely not attack. And the 3 strong martial artists also needed the stronghold's help. If not, the fighting strength they could unleash would be limited. No, they will give up. Bing scoffed. The news of the vast star continent's 3 armies being destroyed has already spread to all the continents around the vast star continent. What the vast star continent is worried about now is whether or not they can defend and not find trouble with us. Oh no, they still need to worry about whether or not we will find trouble with them. He forced himself to calm down. It was a premeditated attack. Not bad. Bu Zifei said calmly, although there is a process of getting used to it. Yang Ziqing had been in a dream for the past few days. The battle report was like a nightmare that he could not get rid of. He had never thought that Bu Zifei's 7th Army would actually be defeated. Sun Jie's defeat could be said to be due to underestimating the enemy, but Bu Zifei's character was extremely cautious, and he still lost. That was definitely not due to underestimating the enemy. Bing did not mind. He bit on the cigarette in his mouth and said casually, "Please sit, Mr. Bu. How have you been these few days?" Of course, Baba La's face was filled with pride. The friends of a legend are also legends. When we die, we will also become legends. He raised his spirits and said, "I want to go to the Sword Forest stronghold." Bu Zifei was surprised. "Don't tell me we have other armies?" The brand new tactics caused the awakened blue dwarfs to be filled with excitement, and everyone's morale was high. What was more exciting than creating history? Especially to the awakened and rebellious blue dwarfs. The enemy had a clear strategic goal, but the vast star continent did not, so it was not wrong for them to lose. But what made him feel inconceivable was, at that time, the enemy was so confident that they could win against the powerful vast star continent. Just at that moment, another subordinate rushed in anxiously, "Master, it's not good. The pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light has been attacked by an unknown force, and is damaged in 7 places." Bu Zifei hesitated for a moment, then said, "Should we prepare for the vast star continent's attack? The vast star continent will not give up so easily." The enemy was strong, far stronger than what they had imagined. Such an opponent was like a demon or god. Everything here filled him with curiosity. A strange stronghold, a strange strong martial artist, and everything seemed to be decided by his superior. He had never heard of any spirit dyad that had such a heavy responsibility and freedom. Yang Ziqing's eyes darkened and almost fell down. The piercing sunlight passed through the open door and shone on his face. After not seeing the sunlight for a few days, he was not used to it. But at that moment, the fear gradually disappeared, and he felt a sense of relief. Yang Ziqing shuddered. The subordinate swallowed his saliva. We have sent a few scouts, Qin Continent, Flower Stone Continent, Li Continent, and Meng Continent. When Bu Zifei saw Bing, he was truly surprised, a smoking spirit dyad. When Song Didi received the order, he felt that the commander of the Sword Forest Stronghold's brain was fried. Did he think that he could rely on a central village regiment to defend against a silver-grade army? Song Didi, who had received formal military education, was very clear of the difference between a central village regiment and a silver-grade army in the human world. Blue world. He was finally convinced by Barbara, and the two of them thought of ways to form a group. All of them were awakened blue dwarves. The excited Barbara immediately sent someone to Sword Forest Stronghold to send a letter, but the reply surprised the two of them. Bing rejected their request for reinforcements and requested for them to seize the time to train, and gave them a strange order. The blue dwarves were short in stature, weak in strength, and did not have any special usage of energy. But they were extremely fast, and after training, they could become even faster. They were proficient in throwing, and all sorts of javelins never missed their target, and the blue world produced all sorts of strange javelins that were extremely powerful. Song Didi could obviously tell that the opponent was learning from the human light cavalry, but he had to admit that it was the best way for the blue dwarves to develop. Master, you can't. Seems like Mr. Bu has not thought of where to go. Bing thought for a moment. I wonder if I can have the honor to invite Mr. Bu to be my advisor? Would the opponent kill me? Or torture me? He lost wholeheartedly, and was filled with curiosity towards the mysterious commander. Especially when he heard that the commander was a spirit dyad, he became even more curious. Upon saying that, he felt his entire body become relaxed, and instead had an indescribable anticipation for the future. Finding the path to the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light, and waiting for orders there. Master, this is like sending a lamb into a tiger's mouth. Yang Ziqing suddenly had a bad premonition. Is this another piece of bad news? It is time to begin. Occasionally, blue dwarves would appear on the pontoon bridge, but their numbers were small. As long as their numbers were small, the blue dwarves' fighting capabilities were weak. That was also why the people in charge of the pontoon bridge's safety were ordinary armies. Song Didi followed Bing's suggestion and continued to train the troops. In the blue world, there had never been a troop that trained like that. The blue dwarves' tactics were lacking. Other than the human wave tactic, there was nothing worth praising. In that moment, Yang Ziqing actually felt as though he was in the rain. Wait a minute. Did Master just say to find trouble with the vast star continent? He knew that the vast star continent was at its most dangerous moment. If the other continents confirmed the fact that the vast star continent was defeated, what awaited the vast star continent would definitely be restless. And at that time, with the Sword Forest Stronghold behind them, the vast star continent would be in trouble. Chapter 636. The tall and skinny man was using spirit techniques and had the style of the Honorable Martial Shrine, although it was slightly different, but Tang Tian was able to recognize it immediately. He quickly thought, let's go to Gold Street. Tang Tian, who was racking his brains, suddenly had an idea. Without Bing by his side, Tang Cho knew nothing about the situation in White Sand City, so at that time, he had to stand up. Have you thought about it? If He Ying fails, what would you do? Lady Rose suddenly said. Qin Yu Ran, who had rushed over, heard that, and anxiously said, Big Brother Meng, you must definitely save them. His expression was resolute. Everything that had happened made him completely understand the situation he was in. If not for Tang Tian's protection, he would have been killed by He Ying, and not even his bones would be left. The tall and skinny man nodded his head. I know the severity of the situation. The tall and skinny man heaved a sigh of relief. You should have said so earlier. Eldest young noble reacted the fastest, and immediately laughed. Of course, of course. This is a grudge between us and He Ying. We are just temporarily borrowing the Suji Worldwide Commerce's shops. It has nothing to do with the Suji Worldwide Commerce's position. I will go with you. Qin Yuran said resolutely. If it was before, when they left, He Ying would be more than happy. But now, He Ying would definitely not let them go. Both parties were already in a situation where they would not rest until one party was dead. The tall and skinny man's heart shook, his face filled with shock. Lady Rose said indifferently, I just want to remind you, don't forget your own mission. Those few families are the real trouble. How can we lose? If we can't obtain the White Sands continent, then we will turn it into a chaotic battlefield. Lady Rose laughed gently. Chaotic battles are not considered a good plan, but it is still acceptable. Tang Tian's face revealed a look of joy. Warships? Then what about these people? Ling Xia looked at the ladies in the Moon Manor. Ying failed? How did he fail? The tall and skinny man was surprised. His face was filled with disbelief, although they were at a disadvantage. But He Ying, who had 3 silver-grade armies, held the absolute advantage. But those shops all have owners. Ling Xia was hesitant. The defenses of the shops were strong, but the employees had long escaped, and without anyone controlling it, it was fine against 1 or 2 thieves, but against an army, the defenses were weak. I want all of your men to move out. The tall, skinny man's expression turned cold. If they truly came from Heaven's Road, then they are the true threat. Luckily, the 3rd and 4th armies were not there. If not, their situation would be even more dire. When the Suji Worldwide Commerce's warehouse was opened, the gleaming weapons that were piled up like mountains dazzled everyone's eyes. And Tang Tian also suspected that the tall, skinny man had already found out about their origins. The Honorable Martial Continent and Temple definitely had a special method of communication, and through Temple, the Honorable Martial Continent could easily obtain information about him. Su Jin pretended to cough lightly and said, How could you break down the door and enter? Is our Suji Worldwide Commerce a proper business? These things can be used by you, but you must ensure the safety of our employees. Your fight has nothing to do with us. The Honorable Martial Continent. The skinny and tall man was sent by the Honorable Martial Continent, who knew that He Ying's backing was actually the Honorable Martial Continent. Suddenly, the door of the Suji Worldwide Commerce opened, revealing Su Jin. He immediately waved at Tang Tian, Over here. Very quickly, all of the ladies followed out. Qin Yuran's calm and collected demeanor made everyone trust her, and more importantly, no one dared to stay. In such a chaotic situation, if they were to leave the group, it would mean death. Even the families that were on the same side as He Ying did not dare to stay. Before He Ying came, the hooligans that were trying to take advantage of the situation would most likely have found them. Tang Chou brought Xie Yu into the Suji Worldwide Commerce's warehouse. They wanted to see what they could use. Looking at the gentle beauty in front of him, the tall, skinny man felt his entire body turn cold. The Honorable Martial Continent's intentions were not clear, but He Ying definitely had no path of retreat. Once the coup failed, he would only be dead. How can we casually touch our customers' goods? Su Jin pretended to speak, then scoffed. It has already been remodeled. Lady Rose drank her tea calmly. He then spoke softly. The Sun family's shop next door and the Rongji store opposite have many good things. The goods on the shelves are definitely gone, but every family definitely has a warehouse that they did not have time to move, so there should be many good things. You guys need to be quick. Tang Chou's eyes suddenly lit up to the point that no one could look straight at him. There were so many different types of weapons, it could turn the entire Gold Street into a fortress. He continued, and for the sake of theft and robbery, the defenses of the shops are not bad. As long as we modify them slightly, they can become good defensive positions. He seized the time to recover his strength. If not for his stamina being exhausted by the Qin continent's tyrannical mounts, He Ying would not have been able to escape. The following battle would most likely be even more intense. He Ying will definitely make a move soon. The fighting intent in Tang Tian's body soared. He never thought that he would have to fight with the Honorable Martial Continent so early. Tang Tian, who had entered his battle state, became extremely calm and sharp. You do not have the authority. Lady Rose's voice was extremely gentle. Furthermore, you are only guessing. Tang Tian's gaze was fixated on the warship that was quietly placed in the corner. If they were to escape, It would instead give the second army the chance to destroy them. Only by defending could they make up for their disadvantage. She knew that Big Brother Meng was not just scaring them, so she flew into the group of ladies and reminded them, cheered them on, and occasionally helped them out. If that's the case, then it is a good place. Tang Chou nodded his head. Tang Chou glanced at Aya. Aya understood and flew away. The bustling Gold Street was currently empty and desolate. Occasionally, there would be a few people who wanted to make a move, but upon seeing the large group of people, they would immediately run away in fear. Ling Xia did not hesitate, although the ladies were burdens, but she was clear of their value. If they were to give up on them, it would undoubtedly be pushing them towards Hiying, and that also meant pushing the families behind them towards Hiying. Although the destruction of the vanguard unit was a huge blow to the second army, but in any army, the vanguard unit was a powerful weapon, but definitely not the core. I suspect that they are from Heaven's Road. The tall and skinny man said. Gold Street has many tall buildings, the environment is complicated, it is more advantageous for us. Tang Tian, who had entered his battle state, was like a completely different person. His acute battle awareness allowed him to notice many details that he would not normally notice. If they were to fight in the wilderness, and the Swift Army and the Skull Unit met the Second Army, they would definitely not have the chance to win. Even though the Skull Unit had won the battle beautifully, but the Swift Army and the Skull Unit had only been in Tang Chou's hands for a short period of time. Tell them to keep up with the team. If anyone falls behind, she'll die. Tang Tian thought for a moment, then said, Ling Xia, go and tell them, if they are willing to follow us, then follow us. If they are not, then let them be. I only have a minute. But Tang Tian did not think too much about it. There was no use in being overly suspicious. The most important thing was to fight the upcoming battle. You! The tall and skinny man was enraged. Tang Tian was startled. Isn't the door fine? There isn't even a crack. Tang Tian was surprised. Qin Yu Ran's performance was much more outstanding than many other men. But he quickly focused his attention on the upcoming battle. Su Jin laughed and spoke softly to Tang Tian. You guys came at the right time. There is still a batch of goods in the warehouse that have not been shipped out. There are many good things. That's right, your warship is here too. Tang Tian thought about Richard, who had not received any news for the past few days. But thinking about the chaotic situation, even if Richard wanted to find them, it would not be easy. If it is for defense, master, this place is not suitable. Tang Chou said directly. He did not place silver-grade armies in his eyes. If given time, he believed that the two armies would definitely become silver-grade armies. But now, the difference between the two parties was a reality. Hiying had nowhere to retreat to, so how could they retreat to? Gold Street? Tang Chou did not know where they were. Eldest young noble and Ling Xia were startled. The Honorable Martial Temple had finally appeared. With such a large group of people moving majestically, the bandits that were trying to take advantage of the situation naturally retreated. But they were unable to hide, and believed that Hiying and the rest would quickly find them. You are right about that. Lady Ro chuckled and placed down the teacup. So, my men have already gone. Unexpectedly, the one who spoke was eldest young noble. At such a time, how can we care so much? All of these sneaky actions were the Skull Unit's fort. Aya was extremely excited to be able to openly rob. It was her first time encountering such a good thing. When Tang Tian saw Su Jin, he was overjoyed and immediately ran over. Everyone was dumbstruck. They had forcefully smashed open shop after shop. The tall and skinny man was stunned. Although he had just given the order to set up defenses, but upon knowing that they were about to face a silver-grade army, he immediately reminded them. The tall and skinny man's heart trembled. He knew that he had lost his composure and was not as clear as a lady. My mission is to seize White Sands and instigate internal strife in the southern region. Lady Rose said gently, even if they come from Heaven's Road, what has it got to do with me? You are too anxious. Lady Rose spoke calmly. Her beautiful face was dignified and gentle. She sipped on her green tea. So what if they come from Heaven's Road? The pawns that cross the river are all orphans. Splitting up the southern region is a major trend. With a major trend in our hands, orphans are just ants. the orphans from back then, are they still alive? Tang Tian's cold tone caused Qin Yu Ran's heart to tremble. The big brother Meng in front of her was somewhat unfamiliar. Maybe this was the real big brother Meng. There was no news of the First Army. That was a variable. Tang Tian suddenly thought about it. Eldest young noble's visit was Su Abai's suggestion. That meant that Su Abai had long sensed something. I'm saying if... Lady Rose smiled. Her charm seeped into the bones. Her voice was also sweet. If he loses, then let the pirates enter the continent. Lady Ro only listened, but did not speak. He took a deep breath. You are right. But He Ying concerns your success or failure. If he loses, then you will lose. They were about to face He Ying's second army, a true silver-grade army. Chapter 637. Xie Yuan's fighting intent soared. He ran back and forth tirelessly, shouting loudly. The opponent knew how powerful he was, and did not dare to take it head-on. His figure flashed, and a finger struck towards Tang Tian's leg blade. To her, it should have been a perfect sneak attack. She did not hold back at all, but only caused the opponent to suffer light injuries. She was experienced in battles, and knew that although the opponent's injuries looked terrifying, but in truth, it was not that serious. The terrifying chi pressed straight towards Tang Tian's forehead. Tang Tian groaned, his body twisted strangely. He suddenly lowered his body twisted like a fried dough twist, his right leg was like a blade, and shot out. Tang Tian was startled for a moment, and immediately stood up. All right. This meant that Xie Yuan had the potential to become a famed general. In that moment he was secretly on guard. Maybe it was a battle in the wilderness, or maybe it was a command on the spot, but Xie Yuan was not He Ying's opponent. But he had absolute confidence in setting up a defensive formation. When he was in school, he had obtained first place for 3 whole years, and until now, his thesis was still a classic example in the school's teaching materials. When He Ying appeared outside the Moon Manor, she thought that the situation was set. She did not expect for Meng Nan to appear out of nowhere, and almost caused He Ying to lose his life. But what truly shocked her was the machine-like precision of the skull unit, causing her to turn pale with fright. Without thinking, Tang Tian's right fist struck out, the null flames whistled. Xie Fei's ranking in the Shadow Division was 23, and she had never failed in her missions. Strengthen. Continue to strengthen. Qin Yu Ran is not feeling well? He did not dodge at all, and welcomed the finger light, and fiercely punched out. You are Lady Rose man. Tang Tian suddenly understood. But Xie Fei was not any better. The gray fist shadows were like raindrops, smashing towards the finger light. In a panic, Tang Tian's left leg suddenly stepped on the ground. Borrowing the force, he retreated. He quickly found the opponent, a few black figures, bringing along afterimages, like ghosts, shuttled back and forth between the formations. As the distance was too close, the soldiers of the Swift Army did not have many ways to deal with the attacks. The black figures were extremely powerful, and a few soldiers had already fallen. Moreover, that gray flame just now was very strange. Tang Tian's heart sank. Madame Ro had arranged for him to enter the Moon Manor in advance. Her strength was the strongest that Tang Tian had seen since entering the Sacred Saint Galaxy, and was even stronger than Xiao Yi compared to the Shadow Unit who had achieved outstanding military merits. The honorable martial army still needed to prove themselves. When two enemies meet on a narrow path, the brave wins. That faintly discernible sense of danger suddenly soared, causing Tang Tian's hair to stand on end. That slender, snow-white jade finger contained the power to destroy heaven and earth. The energy in her body surged, and the light on her jade-like fingers suddenly blazed brightly. His opponent's biggest mistake was to choose to fight him in close combat. Unexpectedly, even though he was fast, his opponent was faster. His vision blurred again, and the shadow of a finger rapidly enlarged in front of him. Tang Chou did not disturb him. The formation that Xie Yuan had set up was quite outstanding and tight. There were some things that he did not understand. It must be the difference between the two systems. What made him feel even more precious was Xie Yuan's fighting intent. In the face of a big battle, he did not fear, but instead was filled with fighting spirit. It was an extremely rare and important quality. Tang Tian walked towards the lady. Suddenly, a faint sense of danger flashed past. The sense of danger was extremely sudden, without any warning, and was faintly discernible. But Tang Tian had been through hundreds of battles, and trusted his own intuition. Chi. He did not know that the other party was even more surprised than him. Wars could not be reversed, and there were many uncontrollable factors, and brave generals were able to obtain the favor of luck more easily. And for generals who were good at fighting, their high fighting spirit could make them even sharper, more decisive, and even braver. The honorable martial continent's armies might not be the strongest, but the development of the honorable martial continent far surpassed any other continent. The honorable martial continent's unique spirit techniques were completely different from the current training system and were extremely powerful. Xie Fei believed that the strong martial artists that the Shadow Unit had surpassed all the other martial artists in the various continents combined. The destructive power of the null flames. The rumors say that Mr. Meng is impulsive and stupid, but from the looks of it, the rumors are truly unreliable. The lady said. There was no intense explosion, but Tang Tian felt a pain in his fist. Her finger easily pierced through the null flames, and a bloody hole appeared on Tang Tian's fist. The fire cloud at the banquet had left a deep impression on her, so she chose to fight in close combat, to prevent the opponent's fire cloud from displaying its full potential. But she never thought that before she could find the honorable martial continent, the honorable martial continent would find her first. Suddenly, the sounds of intense fighting came out from a shop. Blood splattered everywhere, but Tang Tian was oblivious to it, and frantically struck Xie Fei's finger. Xie Fei's body trembled, the energy congealed at her fingertip was finally unable to withstand the attacks, she spat out a mouthful of blood and flew out. Tang Chao's target of guidance was the Skull Unit. The mercenaries had gathered an astonishing amount of resources. The amount of resources was enough for them to use for more than 2 weeks. But to Aya and the rest, they were unfamiliar with such positional warfare. The training of positional defense was something that only regular armies would do. To her, Ying did not have any reason to fail, and Lady Ro's arrangements were unnecessary. But she still listened to Lady Ro's arrangements and acted as a spy. They were already familiar with this. The honorable martial continent's annexation of the various continents in the western region was mostly due to the Shadow Unit. This quality was not something that could be learned, and had nothing to do with tactics. This type of leader was more trustworthy and more reliable. Follow this and break through. When Xie Fei received the order to kill Meng Nan, she did not hesitate at all. To her, Meng Nan had the potential to become the honorable martial continent's enemy. She had made ample preparations for this journey, and did not underestimate the enemy. Tang Tian suddenly laughed. Idiot! Tang Chao's gaze turned cold. There's an intruder. With Tang Chou there, he did not need to worry about the defense of the formation, and in a large-scale army battle, Tang Tian was completely clueless. A dot of light aura lit up like a star, and suddenly appeared. Sounds of battle came out from the ground above him. Tang Tian only saw a blur in front of him. In a blur of afterimages, a jade-like finger lightly pointed at him, bringing with it a faint white halo. The clouds were light and the wind was gentle, without any trace of smoke or fire. Xie Fei was one of the trump cards of the Honorable Martial Continent's Shadow Unit, and because Lady Ro's mission was extremely important, she was sent out. Expert. Lady Ro had arranged for her to be amongst the ladies, but she did not approve of it. With his life in danger, Tang Tian did not hold back at all in his kick. It was extremely sharp. The strength of the lady in front of him was unfathomable. The strange finger was a spirit technique, and Tang Tian could sense an aura that belonged to the Honorable Martial Temple. But its might far surpassed the spirit techniques of Temple. The Skull Unit was more proficient in small-scale coordination, and once the battle reached its climax, both parties would come into contact, and the Skull Unit's might would be displayed. Tang Tian gasped for breath. His fists were covered in blood, his flesh was badly mutilated, and blood continued to drip onto the ground. The gray flames that enveloped his fists had become much dimmer. His expression was sinister. Xie Fei's finger aura had entered his body, wreaking havoc inside. Tang Tian was overwhelmed with shock. Ever since the null flames were activated, he was practically invincible. The characteristic of forcefully destroying energy made the null flames become Tang Tian's strongest killing technique. There had never been any attack that could penetrate through the null flames. And the current Tang Tian's physique was extremely strong, and even swords and blades could not injure him, but in front of the finger, it was useless. Come on. Tang Chou did not see it that way. Good eyesight. The lady was surprised. To be able to recognize that this lady is from the honorable martial continent, Mr. Meng's background is truly not simple. Tang Chou did not interfere, no matter how outstanding Xie Yuan's talent was. To become a true famous general, he needed to be sharpened through actual battles. The battle that was about to begin was undoubtedly a good training. Mr. Meng, please follow me. Xie Fei was shocked. Her sneak attack actually failed. One punch after another. Sufficient resources and manpower, complicated terrain, it was the perfect condition. Be careful not to destroy the energy barrier, release a honeycomb sword cannon, drag it out from the warehouse, and construct a defensive formation. She has mixed in with the ladies. A lady rushed over anxiously with a worried look. Mr. Meng, young Miss Yuran is not feeling well. Can you go and take a look? The lady turned and led the way, but in the moment she turned, her figure suddenly became blurry. On Tang Tian's leg, there was a huge hole that was bleeding profusely. He was oblivious to it, and only stared at her and said, "Honorable Martial Continent." The two figures separated. Xie Fei never thought that Tang Tian would actually choose to attack without any regard for his life, and before she could react, Tang Tian had already released a few punches. She knew that she could not retreat, and in such a head-on clash, any action of retreating would only cause her to be in danger. In the previous test, Xie Yuan had displayed such qualities, but he was even more tenacious. At the same time, he was tenacious and courageous, as well as an outstanding general. His future was bright. Tang Tian was currently touching the warship. He liked it a lot, and pulled a few members of the Skull unit who were the most proficient in piloting warships over. The size of the warship was not big, but correspondingly, it was more agile and faster. Mr. Meng's elite army is being massacred. Xie Fei laughed. This young lady did not come alone. Where there was light, there would be shadows, and the shadow department was the strongest department in the honorable martial continent, and their members were proficient in assassinations. And because of their identities as ladies, they did not attract any attention. If not for He Ying's success or failure, which concerned the success or failure of the mission, Xie Fei would not have taken action. Tang Tian laughed, revealing an indescribable bloodthirstiness. Although his injuries were more severe, but his confidence was at an unprecedented high. Damn it! Xie Yuan looked around and commanded loudly. There was not a hint of panic on his face. He was not panicking at all. I am about to fight with a silver-grade army. Isn't this the battle that I have been waiting for? Bang! Tang Tian's mind trembled, and at the same time, Xie Fei's figure disappeared. It was the first time she had encountered such a situation. Is it finally here? Chapter 638. Tang Tian bellowed. Welcoming the rain of finger auras, he brazenly rushed forward. Tang Tian had unleashed his powerful intuition. Xie Fei did not feel good at the moment. Xie Fei could not believe her eyes. Is he crazy? She initially thought that Meng Nan would use his outstanding judgment to dodge the finger auras, but never did she expect him to not have any intention of dodging, and instead used the most brutal and direct method. Attack distance. Her 10 fingers were enveloped in the dim light. She gently flicked her fingers. The finger auras rained down on Tang Tian. Countless finger auras suddenly blossomed out from her 10 fingers like a white rainstorm. The young lad's willpower, the young lad's determination, the young lad's oath, had never wavered. A person's energy is limited. Tang Tian acted as though he did not feel anything. His body was like an arrow, frantically rushing forward. He was powerful. His moves were extremely fast, direct and efficient. Without any hesitation, it was filled with aggressiveness, filled with a sense of pressure. If she had not personally witnessed the terrifying fire cloud, Xie Fei would definitely have thought that she was fighting against an expert close-quarters combat expert. Close-quarters combat saints' most obvious trait was their lightning-fast speed, and different from long-range combat saints, close-quarters combat saints' speed in a small area would reach a terrifying level. It was difficult to capture with the naked eye, and some experts were so fast that even energy undulations could not be captured. Stick to beat. To be able to use such a minute amount of energy, who is he? Xie Fei, who had appeared behind Tang Tian, did not even have the time to attack when a transparent ripple of air suddenly entered her vision, and at the same time, she caught sight of Tang Tian's hand blade. Xie Fei was in a difficult situation. Meng Nan's movements were actually faster, and he had once again determined where she was going to land, causing her to almost fall into his trap. As expected, once the distance was pulled apart, she immediately felt the pressure lessen. Tang Tian seemed to have sensed it. His figure flashed and passed through the three-finger auras. Following the momentum, his right leg suddenly shot up like a blade and slashed towards Xie Fei. But she had abundant battle experience upon seeing Tang Tian make a mistake. That's right, to her, the enemy finally made a mistake. At such a time, the most important thing was to grab hold of the opportunity. It was the first time Xie Fei was shocked. Meng Nan's indomitable aura was like a sharp sword, piercing into her heart. Coupled with this kind of unreasonable, rhinoceros-like rampage fighting style, it finally broke Xie Fei's mental state, and for the first time, she felt helpless. A sharp gust of air brushed past her cheek, making it sting. Come on, give it your all. Xie Fei was stunned. Was this guy looking for death? Both parties left behind two afterimages as they tangled with each other. His palm that was filled with null flames smacked the side of the finger aura. Tang Tian's fist fiercely struck a small energy shield. Bang! The small energy shield shattered into pieces, and three-finger auras quietly attacked from within the shattered auras. Every movement was incredibly fast. This was the first time that Tang Tian had encountered such a situation. Even the fundamental martial techniques were not fast enough. The incoming finger aura was filled with an intense killing intent. Tang Tian, who had an extremely sharp intuition, felt as if a blade had touched his neck, as if the tip of a sword was at his throat. Every muscle and tendon in his body was so clear and controlled as he wished. He could clearly see the traces of the finger auras flying, and could clearly see the white flames enveloping them. This was a powerful opponent. In front of her, Gong Chen was like a baby. So fast. Once a long-range saint was closed in, the result would be extremely tragic. Xie Fei did not panic. She waved her hand, and another small energy shield appeared in front of her. The spirit technique that consumed a lot of energy was extremely easy in her hands. She could throw it out like it was free, and its might was much stronger than Heaven's Road. And when the blazing rain of light erupted, Tang Tian's face changed. Even Tang Tian had to admit that it was the most perfect combination. But, following that, another finger aura pointed at Tang Tian's left rib. Tang Tian punched down with his left fist, accurately smashing onto the finger aura. Bang! The finger aura shattered. There were no fancy fundamental martial techniques. Other than speed, there was only speed. Since ancient times, intuition had always been one of the most mysterious powers. For example, old soldiers were always able to foresee danger, and when something was about to happen, people would always feel a sense of danger. She started to waver in her judgment. The opponent was more difficult than she had imagined. Meng Nan seemed to be able to predict her attack trajectory and easily dodge or attack. Her powerful spirit techniques were unable to even touch the corner of the opponent's clothes. There were a few times when she thought that she had hit the enemy, but never did she expect that when she dodged, the opponent would actually be able to dodge. But Xie Fei was still confident in herself. She was most proficient in close combat assassination. She was different from those who hid in the shadows and used long-range spirit techniques to kill in one hit and one kill. She liked to disguise herself and hide in close proximity and settle her enemies. She was most proficient in close combat. Her soft and supple arms were enveloped in a faint white flame, and as she waved her hands, countless of pale white finger auras flew out, all of them carrying faint white flames. The finger auras clashed with the null flames, but did not cause Tang Tian's figure to slow down. A scene suddenly appeared in Tang Tian's mind. It was a scene of a close-quarters combat expert that he had seen before. His strength had long surpassed that close-quarters combat expert, but when that scene appeared in his mind, that fierce attack ignited his fighting spirit. Bang! He did not slow down in the slightest, but instead increased his speed. At the same time, both of his hands that were enveloped in the null flames started to move at a frequency that the naked eye could not detect. Her pupils constricted, she forcefully twisted her waist in the air, and tried her best to dodge to the side. The finger auras were extinguished. She suddenly pulled apart the distance between them, and the distance between them was about 70 m. It was still considered a close distance, but it was enough to cause close-quarters combat techniques to lose their effectiveness. But her spirit techniques were still able to attack him. Borrowing the power, Tang Tian twisted slightly. It was her first time encountering such an enemy. His judgment was extremely strong, adding on to his efficiency, without any sloppy movements, it was extremely lethal. Xie Fei quivered. She then noticed that when Tang Tian made his move, he was not blindly unreasonable. His hands would suddenly transform into fists, and suddenly become palms. But she was still the trump card of the shadow unit. Her skills were not ordinary, her willpower was firm. After being dazed for a moment, she understood that she was in a life-and-death situation. If she had hesitated, she would have fallen. So, could it be that my judgment was wrong? It was so difficult to cross the blue sea, it was so difficult to reach here, it was so difficult to find you guys. The Sacred Saint Galaxy was ruled by armies. In terms of individual training, they were far behind Heaven's Road. In terms of training, Heaven's Road was undoubtedly ahead. With the Sacred Saint Galaxy's energy and Heaven's Road's spirit techniques, the Honorable Martial Continent's saints were without a doubt the saints with the strongest individual strength. But how can I retreat? How can I run? Bang bang bang. Under Tang Tian's leg blades, the small energy shield crumbled, but in that moment, Xie Fei's figure disappeared. Xie Fei in front of Tang Tian was a silver saint that had gained enlightenment on energy transmutation, a silver saint that was proficient in spirit techniques. Kill! But so what? They are the Honorable Martial Continent, they are my mortal enemy. They are the mortal enemy of the entire Heaven's Road. They are an enemy that I have to win, an enemy that I have to defeat. There is no other path for me to take. After a few exchanges, Xie Fei finally admitted that her judgment was wrong. Meng Nan was definitely a true close-quarters combat expert, and furthermore, after the initial fluster, she slowly saw through Meng Nan's path. His goal is the extremely dangerous finger aura. When Xie Fei's 10 fingers lit up, Tang Tian had already sensed the danger. Such a mysterious and powerful power had always been the goal that people chased after. Many of the wise sages had spent their entire lives in hopes of being able to see through the mysteries of the heavens, but until today, no one had been able to completely grasp such a power. With a clear cry, her entire body suddenly released a faint white flame, which was a phenomenon produced when the energy in her body was transformed to the extreme. Tang Tian's attacks were extremely accurate. He was always able to strike the finger aura from the side in an instant. What made Xie Fei even more fearful was that the opponent was actually able to borrow the power of the finger aura. Tang Tian's hands moved extremely quickly. Borrowing the power of the collision, he continued to adjust his position. From the side, Tang Tian looked as though he was stuck to the finger auras, and continued to advance. Since you are destined to be this young lad's enemy, then you are destined to be defeated by him. Meng Nan's close-quarters combat style was extremely strange. Other than the strange gray flames, there were no energy undulations, and he purely relied on the internal strength of his body. Not only that, their attacks were even faster. In a flash, they were able to complete over 10 attacks. And saints who were engaged in long-range battles would not even have time to prepare their spirit techniques. Meng Nan's close-quarters combat strength shocked her. She had initially thought that Meng Nan was not proficient in close-quarters combat, but who knew that Meng Nan's close-quarters combat was actually equally ferocious. Facing the rain of finger auras, Tang Tian's face became gloomy. The finger auras were extremely soft, but if one were to underestimate them because of that, they would definitely die miserably. The degree of condensation of the finger auras surpassed the spirit techniques of Heaven's Road. Saints of the sacred Saint Galaxy had accumulated far more energy than Saints of Heaven's Road. No, it's not a direct confrontation. In the video, the close-quarters combat expert was sticking to the opponent's attacks, continuously closing the distance, extremely tyrannical. So weird, Xie Fei's heart jumped. She had found the opponent's weakness. When Tang Tian realized that it was as though he was struck by a body-immobilizing technique, his body suddenly froze in the air. The light auras enveloping his palms and fingers suddenly lit up, and his slender fingers disappeared into the air. That was also Xie Fei's plan. Meng Nan's display of strength at the banquet leaned towards long-range battles. Some saints would be in between the two, like swordsmen, but no one could be proficient in both long-range and close-quarters combat. Although it seemed that Meng Nan had some skills in close-quarters combat, but Xie Fei firmly believed that as long as she gave him enough pressure, he would reveal his true form. Under the extreme danger, Tang Tian's attention was completely focused. His intuition had also risen to a terrifying level. The world in front of him seemed to have slowed down. His astonishing intuition allowed him to immediately judge that the rain of light was extremely dense, far exceeding the frequency of his attacks. That also meant that Tang Tian's fundamental martial techniques were not fast enough. Force your way in. Come on, let's fight to our heart's content. The threat of death caused her potential to completely erupt. All the distracting thoughts and hesitation were thrown to the back of her mind. But Tang Tian's eyes did not have any intention of retreating, only two balls of flames burning. If it was said that Tang Tian made Xie Fei surprised, then Xie Fei made Tang Tian excited. Chapter 639. In that moment, time became even slower, as though it had stopped. Could it be that after spending so much effort and experiencing so many dangers to reach here, it was all for me to fall here? But when her gaze landed on Tang Tian's face, she was startled. That guy is actually smiling, but there is not enough time. In such a terrain, a large army would only give the enemy an opportunity to attack. Not being able to send in more people meant that the scale of the battle would not be large, but the intensity of the battle caused every spectator's face to turn ugly. This was extremely important, because the shops were the most important areas to set up their formations. Only by chasing the extremely slippery assassins out from the dark corners could Xie Yun calmly set up his formation. Tang Tian had trained his fundamental martial techniques to an extremely profound level, possibly to an unprecedented level. And probably no one would spend so much time on fundamental martial techniques. Xie Fei had some respect in her heart, but her expression quickly turned cold. The opponent's injuries were severe, and was obviously an arrow at the end of its flight. Amidst the dense explosions of the finger auras, there was also the sound of blood spurting out. Amidst the white light that filled the sky, blood droplets swept past. The young man's face was so focused that it looked like a statue. The Skull unit had already lost over 60 men, but they had also killed 6 of the enemy's men. Even if Aya and the rest had the absolute advantage in numbers, killing an elite assassin would require the lives of 10 soldiers. Everyone, enter the formation. A pillar of blood shot out from his chest, leaving behind a hole. Tang Tian did not even groan. He grinned and revealed his white teeth. The injury this time had given him some precious time. Boss. Aya and Xie Yun's mind trembled at the same time. The blood drained from their faces. If something were to happen to Boss, then all of their hard work would be for naught, and that would be a complete failure. Tang Tian laughed. The casualties quickly appeared. It was the Skull unit. The second army flew over majestically, and when Xie Yun saw the warships, his face finally changed. In the distant horizon, there were many light dots that lit up the darkness. Chi. The battle on the ground was also extremely intense. Tang Tian received a huge blow. To any saint, if their strongest point was destroyed by someone else, that kind of blow was undoubtedly devastating. Every detail, every change, was unprecedentedly clear, unprecedentedly magnified. Bang bang bang. Puff, in the pool of blood, the assassin coughed up blood. Tang Tian was like a fish on the verge of suffocation, frantically searching for a glimmer of hope to survive. Tang Chao's orders were immediately executed, the swift army quickly retreated, while the skull unit rushed forward. Tang Tian's tenacity far exceeded Xie Fei's imagination. Tang Tian had already suffered 12 finger auras, although they were not fatal, but blood continued to flow out, making him look like a man made of blood. Just as they wanted to charge back, Tang Chao's cold order came out. Skull unit, retreat back to your position, everyone prepare for battle. There must be, tactic number 7. But they were elites of the honorable martial continent, they were powerful and experienced. The finger radiance sank into the wall, ground, and warship behind him as effortlessly as cutting through tofu, leaving behind densely packed holes like a beehive. Even a warship with an astonishing defense could not put up any resistance in front of these finger auras. Wood splinters flew everywhere, and the deck was pierced through. And the finger auras that entered the ground left behind bottomless holes. I said before that I will never give up, I said that I will definitely fight to the end, I said that I will never give up any hope, no, even if there is no hope. I said that I will definitely be there. Even if I am covered in injuries, even if I am badly mutilated, even if I am struggling at death's door, even if I am crawling, even if I die. Enter the formation. The blood in his body suddenly boiled like lava, the intense burning sensation in every corner of his body wantonly combusted. That's right, it was as though something was burning, as though something was spewing out, as though something was roaring and roaring, wantonly declaring its will and pride. I can definitely be faster. It was the most common method for mercenary armies to use when encountering experts. A small team of 7, their fighting capabilities were not considered strong, but they were able to ensure that they would not be easily destroyed by the enemy, and their movements were more agile. The light aura around Xie Fei flowed like water into her palms. Her expression was solemn as she slowly raised her palms, and in her palms, a gentle light ball was raised above her head. Xie Yuan nodded his head with a serious expression. He turned and flew away. He could see through the enemy's intentions. If the second army arrived, they would not have any chance to set up a defense line. Tang Chou snorted emotionlessly, "Swift army, do not tangle with the enemy, skull unit, attack. You should also die at the end point." One after another, black-robed figures appeared and disappeared from the buildings. Their movements were extremely fast, like spirits in the night, reaping lives. Xie Fei was not lying, her mission was to kill Meng Nan, and the elite assassins were there to disrupt the situation, and not give Tang Chou the chance to set up a defense formation. A thin light beam shot out from the light ball, and a needle-sized light spot appeared on Tang Tian's forehead. Aya raised her big sword and rushed forward. It was her habit to be at the forefront. Her individual strength was the strongest in the skull unit, and she was the backbone of the skull unit. What do I do? Tang Chao's order resounded in the night sky. It's time to end, brave warrior, then let it end in a dignified manner. Truly an unyielding man. In front of the true elites, the swift army soldiers were completely unable to resist, and in a short span of 10 seconds, they had lost over 20 men. Xie Yuan's roar resounded throughout the entire Gold Street. He knew that the most critical moment had arrived. The following battle was definitely going to be intense. The entire defense line was being guarded by the Swift Army. That also meant that the Swift Army had to face the attacks of the Second Army alone. He roared in his heart, he screamed and told himself. All of his focus, all of his intuition, all of his consciousness, all of his senses, all of them, were focused on the fundamental martial technique in his hands. Not good. Tang Tian was locked on. I can definitely do it. The 9th finger aura, compared to the 7th finger aura that he had predicted, had 2 more finger auras. After destroying the 2 finger auras, he saw hope for victory. Frigates. The Second Army actually brought a frigate. After destroying the 9th finger aura, Tang Tian was finally struck by the finger aura, chi, blood splattered, and a bloody hole appeared on his thigh. After paying the price of close to 80 men, Aya finally killed the last assassin. Furthermore, every bit of time was exchanged with the lives of the Skull Unit soldiers. The familiarity that was formed from training for a long period of time was like a thick layer of ice, slowly melting, and a few unfamiliar details started to appear. Out of all the martial techniques that Tang Tian had trained in, fundamental martial techniques were the fastest. Although there were many martial techniques that added in a large number of techniques to increase the speed of his attacks. But to Tang Tian, they were all superfluous. Tang Tian suddenly woke up. For some reason, a burst of anger surged from his chest. The Second Army. They had changed from fighting one-on-one and started to cover for each other. The finger auras in front of him gradually closed in. Tang Tian, who was in a strange state, was extremely clear of his own ending. On the seventh finger aura, he was finally unable to keep up with the speed of the finger aura, and was struck. Aya's eyes were already red from killing, and so were the Skull Unit. The Skull Unit crumbled like snow, and quickly turned into groups of 7. They were like small snakes, closing in on the elite assassins from all directions. Time was too tight. The formation that they had set up was far from being impregnable, and could not even be considered complete. She spoke softly, but it was like thunder, causing the energy around her to jump. Inside the torrential light auras, Tang Tian's figure was like a withered leaf, helpless and weak. Light does not forgive anything. Xie Yuan secretly clenched his fists. There definitely is. But more importantly, she had successfully pushed the assassins onto the streets. He was extremely focused on the fundamental martial techniques in his hands, and did not feel the finger auras that filled the sky. He continued to shatter 3 finger auras, and seeing that he could not dodge the 4th finger aura, Tang Tian did not dodge, but instead moved his body to receive it. No. Xie Yuan and Aya were startled. Their eyes immediately looked towards the sky. Even if I die, I should die at the end point. Pa. The energy in the entire street trembled, causing Aya and the rest to reveal looks of shock. The assassin, who was lying in a pool of blood, suddenly revealed a fanatical light aura in his eyes. Leaving behind the fanatical look on his face, his life force dissipated. Xie Fei's entire body was enveloped in a layer of faint white light aura. Her awe-inspiring might was like that of a god. Her eyes did not have any emotions. It was indifferent and dignified. With her full power attack, she had entered a whole new realm. Even Tang Tian, who had a strong mental fortitude, was at a loss for what to do in that instant. Just at that moment, a sudden thunderous sound exploded in the sky. Every sacrifice of her comrades caused Aya's heart to bleed. She then understood that the battlefield was another world, a world that was even more cruel than their usual battles. Xie Fei heaved a sigh of relief. The opponent was finally injured. That meant that he was not far from death. Light does not forgive anything. The finger auras in front of him covered his entire vision. There were too many of them, to the point that there was no space for him to dodge. After training in the fundamental martial techniques countless of times, he was extremely familiar with every movement, as though it was instinct. Not enough. This is not enough. There must be something that can make it even faster. The flames of conviction burned Tang Tian's steel body. He was like a man made of steel that just jumped out of a furnace. His entire body was red. He attacked frantically, not leaving any leeway, not retreating at all. The fundamental martial techniques ignited with willpower, exploding in the air. Tang Chou knew that the battle would not end so quickly. He turned to Xie Yuan and said, "Hurry up and set up the formation." Tang Tian's attack frequency was so high that even Ling Su could not catch up. In Tang Tian's battles, he had encountered all sorts of situations, but it was the first time he realized that his attack frequency was not high enough. Fundamental martial techniques lacked variations, and did not involve the use of true power, causing its might to be small, and its use in battle was basically 0. But because there were no variations and no true power to be used, it was the fastest. Chapter 640. Xie Fei sensed danger. The light ball in her hand released a light beam that shot towards Little Fool. Little Fool looked at the lady in front of him coldly. Her body was releasing an extremely disgusting aura. Fight. Tang Tian walked towards the warship shakily. Xie Fei's heart sank, but she was not happy at all. She did not feel that the tiny light beam had hit anything. This gave her a bad premonition, but her unforgivable death ray had never missed before. Could it be that she was imagining things? That is blink, Meng Nan is. Wait a bit more. Xie Yuan said. Tang Tian suddenly laughed. The smile that landed in Xie Fei's eyes was extremely bewitching. Xie Fei's heart jumped. She suddenly opened her eyes. The Meng Nan in front of her was extremely brave and ferocious, but why would he have such a bewitching smile? The air was filled with the smell of blood. It was the idiot's blood. I never thought that Xie Fei would be able to force Tang Tian to such a state, causing Little Fool to be surprised. But after the surprise, there was a dense killing intent. The fire net was extremely agile. Upon coming into contact with the light ball, it immediately wrapped around it tightly. Definitely not. She threw the light ball in her hand towards Little Fool and turned to escape. The true despair was when you wanted to fight but did not even have the chance to. You wanted to risk your life but did not even have the chance. Whoosh. Bang! The light barrier of one of the shops finally shattered. A light ball smashed into it like a shooting star. The intense explosion raised it to the ground. Blink. So annoying. She then noticed that on Meng Nan's shoulder, there was an additional spirit dyad that looked like a child. Dressed in blue, expressionless, the face that looked exactly like Meng Nan was extremely cute. It was just that this adorable and tender little face that made one want to pinch it was expressionless. The rain of light filled the sky. The rumbling of the warships was like a passionate symphony. The colorful light barriers of the shops on Gold Street swayed in the wind and rain, although they had spent a lot of money, but when they were created, the situation that they had envisioned was never war. This caused the entire Second Army to cheer loudly. They were greatly encouraged. They frantically activated all of their energy and unleashed all of their attacks on the once flourishing place. Wait a minute. The adjutant clenched his teeth. Yes. Little Fool's body swayed and disappeared. The light beam missed. Without any warning, Little Fool appeared at a corner of the chessboard, his right palm clenched. Zzz. Sparks flew everywhere. The black Saint Sword Ocean Prison was pulled out from the void dark flames swallowing and spitting. Little Fool flipped his hand and stabbed Saint Sword Ocean Prison into the chessboard beneath his feet. The waiter sneered, "You're injured like this, and you still want to fight?" Xie Yuan's tone was low, as if it came from the depths of his throat. At that moment, he came to a sudden realization. "Milord, if we don't retaliate..." The adjutant was extremely agitated. Darkness hates light. The black void dark flames wriggled like a black snake, flowing along the lines of the chessboard. If one looked closely, they would realize that the black void dark flames were wrapped with a layer of transparent flame, that was the spirit-devouring flame. I still underestimated him. Wait a little longer. Xie Yuan's tone was resolute. No, the young man only wanted to fight. He only knew how to fight until he was left with his last breath. Leave no one alive. He Ying's angry roar was like a dark cloud that covered the sun, reverberating in every corner of the sky. Graceful sword. Little Fool felt that his common sense was completely toppled. His mouth could not help but reveal a bitter smile. What kind of freak is this idiot, to actually be able to gain enlightenment on laws from fundamental martial techniques? The chessboard rose from the ground, like a fire net, pouncing towards the light regiment. He turned and sprinted away. The faint fist aura flew out, not leaving any traces of light in the air, as though it had appeared in front of Xie Fei and entered her body. Don't cause trouble for everyone. Little Fool said coldly, what you need now is to recuperate. Xie Fei's face finally changed. A strong sense of danger lingered in her mind. Every time she sensed something like that, she would turn and run without hesitation. Little Fool kept the shock in his heart and frowned. What are you doing? Tang Tian laughed, revealing his snow-white teeth. I've long been waiting for you. Meng Nan came from Heaven's Road, causing her to panic. I never thought that upon waking up I would become like this. The fine light pierced through Tang Tian's forehead. Countless of light beams lit up the space around him. All of these light beams crisscrossed, transforming into a chessboard, With Little Fool as the center, it extended outwards. With that, Tang Tian turned his head and walked towards the warship, leaving behind a trail of red footprints. He clenched his fists tightly, allowing the blood to flow out of his body. The fire in his chest was still burning, still calling out to him. After releasing his fist, Tang Tian's body swayed and was on the verge of collapse. Suddenly, a blood-red figure appeared in her vision. "I want to grind their bones to ashes." The crisscrossing light beams on the chessboard formed a fire net. Xie Fei was shocked. The last bit of hope in her heart disappeared. She no longer cared about the enemy behind her and ran with all her might. She did not know if there would be anyone like her in the future, but it was definitely unprecedented. The moment she faced death, the moment she faced defeat, the unprecedented sense of defeat, the unprecedented despair. If that idiot dies, then I will die as well. She opened her eyes wide, not moving an inch. Her breathing stopped. Xie Fei, who turned and ran, was not shocked, but happy. She bellowed, "Explode!" One fist. "Hey, godlike young lad, go go go!" Xie Fei, who was rushing forward, seemed to have been struck by a technique and was rooted to the ground. "You are riddled with injuries, you are tired to death, you are in so much pain that you wish you were dead, but you are still alive, you can still breathe, you can still dream, you can still shout. You have the most precious treasure that all those who have died or are about to die yearned for the most, an opportunity to fight." The sea of laws in the forceful subjugating bead was extremely vast, and Little Fool, who had immersed himself in it every day, his understanding of laws far surpassed the majority of people. But he was still unable to differentiate what laws Tang Tian's fist contained. But something flashed past Xie Fei's eyes, causing her body to freeze. That is, his gaze did not leave the figures in the sky. He stared straight at the enemies, calculating the distance between them. Tang Chou, who was beside him, did not say a word, like a wooden man. It was a simple and unadorned fist that did not seem to have any changes. Fundamental fist technique. Tang Tian's fist lit up with a faint light aura. It was a light aura that was completely different from combusting energy. Every time it moved, the energy in the space would jump along with it. Xie Fei was shocked. A spirit technique like Blink could only be found in one place in the sacred Saint Galaxy, and that was the Honorable Martial Continent. Meng Nan was definitely not from the Honorable Martial Continent, so he could only come from one place, Heaven's Road. Because the Honorable Martial Continent's Blink technique also came from there. The attacks that covered the sky seemed to have no end, lighting up White Sand City's night sky. He was covered in blood and looked extremely terrifying. The moment the forceful subjugating bead landed on the chessboard, the flames on the entire chessboard paused for a moment. But in the next moment, the flames erupted. The chessboard seemed to have suddenly come alive, releasing a bewitching energy. And although it was just a glimpse, Little Fool dared to guarantee that the unknown law was definitely not a low-level law. Little Fool waved his hand, and the energy regiment that was enveloped by the fire net flew into his hands. The energy regiment lost Xie Fei's control and congealed into a fist-sized white crystal. Little Fool's emotions were extremely complicated. The two of them were two sides of the same coin, and it was difficult to differentiate one from the other. But Little Fool had always looked down on Tang Tian, although he would occasionally admire his bravery and perseverance. But in terms of talent, Little Fool felt that he could still beat the idiot in a second. Xie Fei revealed a look of fear. All the energy in the space was moved by the fist. Tang Tian's figure suddenly appeared out of thin air on her right side. "Master." The adjutant spoke with a sobbing tone. All the soldiers in the shop were buried alive. Every single soldier of the Swift Army was brought out by him. He was in charge of the soldiers' daily lives, and had deep relationships with them, and upon seeing the tragic state, his eyes were about to pop out. This idiot is actually a freak that can gain enlightenment on laws from fundamental martial techniques, and it's a law that I do not recognize. The last breath that the young man exhaled had the smell of smoke, the smell of dreams, the smell of greatness. Tang Tian's stubborn blood-red figure staggered towards the warship. A light spot as thin as a needle landed on Tang Tian's forehead. What made Little Fool even more shocked was that he could not differentiate what law it was. Her snow-white hands picked up the forceful subjugating bead. As though she was picking up a chess piece, she placed it down. Unforgivable Death Ray was an extremely powerful spirit technique in the honorable martial continent. It had borrowed from Heaven's Road's spirit techniques, but greatly strengthened its might. He was expressionless, his hands formed a sword seal, and slashed in the air. Fundamental martial techniques can actually gain enlightenment on laws. I want them to die without a place to hide. Ha! Injuries, so what? Fatigue, so what? Pain, so what? Tell everyone to listen to my orders later. Once you attack, do not hold back. Laws. Maybe I will die tomorrow. All of my dreams, all of my desires, will be completely buried in the gray of death. What reason do I have to not fight? Because of those ridiculous excuses? Because of those ridiculous remorse? This idiot always likes to mess things up to such an extent. He did not notice that Xie Yuan's fists were hanging by his side, his knuckles had turned white. The ball of light in the fire net jumped, but the fire net shone brightly, and the ball of light was firmly suppressed. Little Fool stared blankly at Tang Tian. He could not believe his eyes. Just now when Tang Tian waved his fist, the forceful subjugating bead suddenly lit up. Laws. Tang Tian's punch just now contained the power of laws. This punch contained the power of a law. No matter what, you can still fight. Tang Tian replied without turning his head, I still have strength. The waiter's expression changed. The energy contained in the ball of light was rather terrifying. A pearl appeared in his hand, the forceful subjugating pearl. The adjutant was stunned. I still have strength. Tang Tian suddenly turned his face and stared fiercely at the waiter. The sword entered the chessboard, and the beams of light trembled. Kill! But Meng Nan's body did not have any energy undulations. How could he know spirit techniques? Chapter 641. Shi Sen's face turned gloomy. He did not expect that the road back to the White Sands continent would be sealed. He had gathered all of the underworld continent's demonic mounts and excitedly returned to the White Sands continent, but he did not expect that the road ahead would be blocked, and many merchant groups were stuck there. Why are we going to the Shang continent? Shi Sen cut him off snappily. Master and the rest definitely have not left the White Sands continent yet. Do you think I should just sit and watch? Shi Sen admired Huaqing. The underworld continent had finally produced a genius. But Shi Sen was able to find a peaceful place underneath the berserk energy vortex. Huaqing and the other novices were initially panicking, but under Shi Sen's command, they started to become more presentable. The low-intensity battle, to these novices, was the best chance to practice. The following battles did not have much suspense. Shi Sen was extremely slippery. Like a loach, he quietly moved forward through the gaps between the pirates. The road to the White Sands continent has already been sealed. The merchant who spoke had a look of worry. I do not know where a large group of pirates came from, but now the entire White Sands continent is filled with pirates. A few merchant groups have already met with calamity. Listen to me, do not go to the White Sands continent at this time, wait for this storm to pass. Sigh, it is not easy to do business these days. That's right. Just give your life to boss. To be able to gather such a large force together, the mastermind's strength was truly terrifying. But occasionally when they talked about Master Bing, they would see Master Shi Sen's face filled with reverence, and even the old seniors would be filled with admiration, causing Huaqing and the rest to be filled with curiosity. Once, they were hiding underneath a gigantic energy vortex, and all of them were trembling in fear. This subordinate is not greedy for these small benefits. Huaqing immediately explained, if we can snatch some equipment, we can disguise ourselves as pirates. We can use the enemy's pursuit as a cover to get closer to the White Sands continent. In theory, this small warship could only carry 40 people. Compared to that, the process of escaping was much more dangerous. Only at that moment did Huaqing and the rest realize in shock how powerful Shi Sen was. The pirates on the 3 frigates were definitely small pirates, but they were small fish-eating shrimps. Seeing the lone frigate, the pirates immediately coveted it. Sun was able to sense the other party's tracks from extremely far away, and then hide before the other party discovered him. The sea of energy was like his home. All the dangerous whirlpools, turbulent flows, energy clumps became his best cover. In the end, Sun and the others managed to seize the warship without any mishaps. However, the warship had also suffered some damage and looked somewhat damaged. Fortunately, there was a lot of equipment on the warship. Although they were only ordinary goods, it was enough to equip them. They had completely sealed off the White Sands continent. A famous general? Sun stared at the rookies and said in a deep voice, "All of you are clearer than me about the reputation of the underworld continent's demonic mounts. All these years, who has looked at you in the eye? Now, this is a chance for us to prove ourselves, to prove the name of the underworld system's demonic mounts. I think you've had enough of this humiliation." The energy whirlpool above their heads released a terrifying shriek, causing their hair to stand. Forget about their small frigates, even the large-scale warships would avoid the whirlpool, afraid of being sucked into it. There were large-scale pirate groups here, and every pirate group had a fixed position. They did not move around randomly, and instead, every pirate group was guarding an area. After fighting all the way, the rookies of the underworld system's demonic mounts quickly became seasoned. They started to understand how to use their own strength, how to cooperate, and how to unleash the things they had trained. They fought and killed their way forward. Whenever they met a small group of pirates, they would rush forward, and upon seeing a larger group of pirates, they would escape. As they only had one warship, the larger groups of pirates did not even have the interest to chase after them. The big fish ate the small fish, and the shrimps were not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Sun's eyebrows relaxed. Sun also took the chance to train the rookies. As long as they went through a few battles and saw blood, these rookies who were originally strong would very quickly become qualified soldiers. A slightly tattered warship appeared in the sea of energy. Last night, Sun and the rest suddenly infiltrated a warship that was anchored there and successfully seized control of the warship. The warship belonged to a merchant group and was the warship that escorted the merchant group. But Sun had chased everyone in, causing the small warship to be filled to the brim. After that, Sun controlled the small warship and quietly slipped into the inner circle. One day later, no army was able to pass through the blockade. "We need some equipment," Wuxia said calmly. "That way we can protect ourselves." He muttered to himself, "I wonder what exactly happened in the White Sands continent. Boss, what do we do now? Why don't we change our route to the Shang continent?" After 2 warships were destroyed, the remaining warships saw that the situation was not good and immediately turned and ran. Sun did not give the order to chase, but kept the resources as the pirates had some good equipment. Everyone was looking at Sun, waiting for his next decision. But Sun was shrewd and ruthless, although the blockade was tight, but it was against a large-scale army, and there were still a few loopholes. Sun returned to the outer circle, and killed a small group of pirates, and chose the smallest and most unremarkable small warship. Their battle results were not bad, and the spoils of war were not bad. Unknowingly, they had changed their weapons and their equipment was much better than before. Among the small groups of pirates, they were definitely the elites. The closer they got to the White Sands continent, the more cautious Sun became, because he could feel that the security was much tighter. Sun was already 100% sure that the pirates had some sort of agreement. 3 against 1, no matter how he looked at it, they had the advantage. Under Sun's command, the unremarkable small warship finally passed through the layers of blockade and arrived at the White Sands continent. "Then tell me what you think?" Sun said. "Boss is right." Sun was experienced. For such a large-scale gathering of pirates, there was definitely someone secretly controlling it. If not, there was some big fat meat that attracted the pirates. He was called Wuxia, and was the strongest out of all of them, and was also the strongest among the underworld continent's demonic mounts in the past few years, and had the highest prestige amongst the new demonic mounts. It truly made people look forward to it. When they were seizing the ship, there were some accidents, and both parties engaged in an intense battle. To become outstanding soldiers, They needed more time and battles. For Master, we need to go back. Xianxia said, Master has always treated us well. Now that Master is in danger, if we go back and leave, we will not be able to live in the future. That's a good idea. Xianxia nodded his head and said resolutely, let's do it that way. Xianxia's old subordinates all responded, while the newly recruited underworld continent's demonic mounts looked at each other. If not for Xianxia's prestige, they would have long turned and left. After overcoming the initial psychological barrier, the newbies started to perform better. At that time, the commotion was too big, with 7 to 8 warships chasing after them. If not for Xianxia's rich experience, and using the complicated terrain of the Sea of Energy to shake off the pursuers, they would have died in the Sea of Energy. Seeing that the other party no longer had the mood to talk, Xianxia took his leave. They safely passed through the enemy's patrol line, and Wuxia and the rest had already revered Xianxia as a god. Xianxia was secretly shocked. What kind of person would be able to do such a thing, to be able to command so many pirates? The pirate groups in charge of sealing the inner circle were all famous big pirate groups, and all of them were heroes. But after the battle, even Wuxia, who was a proud and arrogant person, was convinced by Xianxia. Although Wuxia and the rest were usually not weak, but they had zero battle experience, and were rookies that could not be any more new, and in front of Xianxia, who was a wily old fox, it was not enough. Wuxia continued, there are so many pirates around the White Sands continent. I believe there are definitely a few small groups of pirates that want to fish in troubled waters. And even if there are people controlling them from the dark, but with so many pirates, they will definitely not know each other. Pirates have always believed that the fist is the truth. Even if there is an agreement, if there is a chance to merge, they will not let it go. Thinking about it, the surrounding area of the White Sands continent is currently in chaos. To us, this is our chance. The 3 warships in front of them rushed towards them. Who knew that Wuxia would shake his head? Maybe snatching is better. Seeing the incoming pirates, Xianxia sneered. He ignored Wuxia, who was beside him, who was eager to fight, and ran for his life. A young man bowed respectfully and said, Master's teachings are right. When we came out this time, we never thought of returning alive. We will definitely not tarnish the name of the underworld continent's demonic mounts. Snatch. Xianxia frowned. He hated being a bandit, and upon hearing that, he became unhappy. Could it be that the current underworld continent's demonic mounts had already fallen to such a state? Under the gigantic energy whirlpool that spanned over 10 kilometers, Xianxia calmly drank and ate, chatting and laughing. Just this bearing was enough to completely convince Wuxia and the rest. Xianxia's methods were not limited to just that. He made Wuxia and the rest observe the time of the patrol fleet's appearance, and then taught them how to plan out the patrol fleet's timetable. The chaotic and disorderly Sea of Energy was the best training ground. There were pirates everywhere, and danger could be encountered at any time. The new recruits' battles were never trustworthy, but their training was definitely tough. To be able to obtain the title of Underworld Continent's demonic mounts, their individual strength was not a problem. To them, Master Xianxia was already extremely powerful, and for Master Bing, who was even more powerful than Master Xianxia, how powerful would he be? After escaping, he successfully pulled the other party's troops apart, and without hesitation, he gave the order to turn and rush towards the nearest warship. That's right, I still have some money, I can buy some equipment. Xianxia nodded his head. Chapter 642. Ying had never felt so humiliated before. They were the second army in the entire White Sands continent. Other than that damned Suwa Bai, no one was stronger than him. Ying's face was filled with a sinister smile. His heart was filled with the thrill of being suppressed. The humiliation he had suffered outside the Moon Manor made the thrill even more intense. The collapse of every shop made him tremble with excitement. These ant-like fellows should all die, all of them must die. As expected by Tang Chou, in the short span of 5 minutes, the Swift Army's attacks became sparse. The Swift Army soldiers were still lacking in experience, and did not know how to allocate their strength in such a tough battle. Moreover, a temporary formation was still inferior to a warship. Tang Chou remained expressionless. The individual strength of the swift army was not strong, and the number of silver saints in the army were too few. Under such a crazy and intense attack, they would not be able to hold on for long. Xie Yuan's arrangements were extremely outstanding. Even someone as picky as Tang Chou could not find any fault with it. Even if time was tight, Xie Yuan's arrangements were still very meticulous. He didn't directly use the shops as his main stronghold. Instead, he used the underground warehouse of the shops as his main stronghold. The shops above the ground were just a cover. In the past, they were just a bronze army of a place. No matter how strict their training was, they had never experienced a true battle. In front of a silver-grade army, they did not have any strength to resist. Even the enemy's fierce attack just now had made most of them feel suffocated and terrified. Get close. These underground warehouses and secret rooms were the most important places in every shop. They were used to store precious goods. He Ying stared blankly at the battlefield. He had never thought that the situation would suddenly become like this. Almost half of his second army had been lost, and such a loss had never happened before in the history of the Second Army. A few low-flying battleships were immediately engulfed by the flames and exploded violently. Countless splinters of wood and broken limbs flew everywhere. The densely packed light swords seemed to fill the sky with a soul-shaking whistle. In the face of such an all-encompassing attack, the bravery of an individual seemed extremely insignificant. Countless amounts of blood blossomed in the sky, and miserable screams were drowned out by the roar of the light swords. Every single soldier of the swift army roared out in rage. They could not hear anything with their ears, and could only roar out instinctively. All the energy in his body poured into the warship weapon in front of him without any reservation. These warship weapons had been set up in the formation, and now they had become great killing machines that reaped lives. Other than that, what Tang Chou admired the most was Xie Yuan's composure. A mercenary group actually dared to raise their weapons and charge at them? He was an excellent general. Boom. This unforeseen event was extremely sudden. Another shop was turned to dust. The soldiers inside were already quite experienced, and they retreated a step before the energy barrier broke. However, there were still 10 soldiers who were not buried in time. The figure that flashed past He Ku's vision made him come back to his senses. Tang Chou glanced at Xie Yuan. The usually calm Xie Yuan seemed to have gone crazy at this moment. Tang Chou did not mock him at all. Instead, a hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. Xie Yuan's adjutant tried to persuade him several times, but Xie Yuan remained firm and unwavering. There was even a warship that was less than 30 meters away from them. Xie Yuan could even clearly see the middle finger that the enemy on the warship had extended while laughing wildly. The black mass of warships and people circled above their heads. To prevent the enemy from discovering their true intentions, the fake formation on the ground was guarded by soldiers. The Second Army's attack was extremely ferocious, causing the soldiers on the ground to quickly suffer casualties. But Xie Yuan was still able to control himself and waited for the best opportunity to come. The situation of the battlefield was exactly what they had guessed. Run? Where to run? Including He Ying, everyone thought that the enemies below had already lost the ability to resist, and never thought that they would encounter such a terrifying sneak attack. He Ying also thought so, seeing his own soldiers chasing after the enemies like tigers and wolves. The killing intent in He Ying's heart grew even stronger. Not good. I have waited for this moment, finally. In front of absolute strength, the people below are just a group of ants. He did not notice that a group of figures suddenly rushed out from below. No, at that moment, no one thought about winning. They wanted a massacre. Only a massacre can allow them to vent the anger in their hearts. Against ants, what tactics do we need? Crush them, we just need to crush them. Either you die or I die. He Ying's mournful cry had not even finished, when the ground of the street below suddenly cracked like a spider web. The Second Army is an elite. But at that moment, when Xie Yuan finally gave the order to attack, all of their fear transformed into the most frenzied fighting intent. The warships in the sky were swept clean. The size of the warships were huge, and they were immediately seen as targets, so they were the first batch to be killed. and the soldiers in the sky had lost at least a third of their numbers. Bang! He lowered his head to look down. His own soldiers had chased a few hundred meters away. At the start, they were still cautious, since the vanguard unit had been destroyed, and Ying did not dare to be careless. But the situation was completely one-sided, and the hatred from the humiliation surged in his mind, causing him to finally lose his last bit of scruples. He wanted to ruthlessly trample on the ants. The soldiers of the Second Army were a group of arrogant soldiers. The entire Gold Street was almost destroyed by them, but the enemies were still holed up, causing them to despise the enemies. Instead of saying that it was a battle, it was more like a performance, a beautiful performance in front of the entire White Sand City. Impossible! Who knew that upon seeing that the situation was not good, the mercenary army would turn and run? A mercenary army actually dares to attack a silver-grade army? Bang bang bang! He stared blankly at the street that was in ruins. His mind was buzzing. I was bitten by a group of ants. The soldiers of the Second Army regained their senses. All of them were enraged, their eyes were red, and without hesitation, they rushed towards the enemies. They wanted to tear the group of assholes to shreds. The soldiers of the Second Army chased after the enemies crazily. All of their chests were filled with rage. They were experienced in battles and immediately knew that the soldiers in the formation were exhausted, and as long as they got rid of the fleas, they could still win. In the blink of an eye, Ying suddenly realized that the entire sky had become empty. Everyone press forward. But, in the short span of 5 minutes, the results were remarkable. The destroyed warships had bought time for the soldiers, and attracted the majority of the attacks. Ying could not believe his eyes. I was actually ambushed? Ying's roar could be heard from far away. The explosions in the sky were endless. The light auras from the fireballs lit up the sky. The shops on the ground were all destroyed, but the main formation did not suffer much damage. And the warship weapons were arranged in an impenetrable manner. After meticulous planning, the light pillars, light bullets and light swords interweaved in the sky to form an impenetrable net, a true death net. Finally, it's your turn to taste our power. If not for them not having a path of retreat, if not for the daily strict training that had long become their instincts, if not for their respected master standing at the front lines with them, they would have long crumbled. These ants actually dare to charge at us. But Xie Yuan's performance had already exceeded his expectations, and the battle after that belonged to him. Ying suddenly reacted, his face turning pale white. Around him, there were less than 20 bodyguards left. The warships and soldiers seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, and started to attack. Up till now, the enemy did not even have a single decent attack. I heard that the 2 armies below are newly bought. They have never heard that armies can actually be bought and sold. The entire Second Army was filled with disdain towards the enemy. The Swift Army, who had long been stifled to their limits, vented out all of their anger. Countless of dazzling light pillars, light bullets that resembled raindrops, dense rain of swords. Without any warning, they pounced towards the densely packed enemies in the sky from the Golden Street. A regiment of flames exploded inside the formation. One of the warship weapons in the formation was unable to withstand the intense battle and exploded. The flames from the explosion spread to the soldiers inside the formation, but luckily the power was not strong and did not injure the soldiers. But the soldiers who had lost their weapons were at a loss. They were still in a frenzied state of battle. Destroy this street for me. Some of the warships even removed their energy barriers to display their bravery. After resting, the Skull unit had recovered their fighting strength, and Aya personally rushed to the front. They formed a group of 15, and like poisonous thorns that shot out from the ground, their targets were the soldiers of the Second Army in the sky who were in a daze. The warships were supplied with energy, and the soldiers needed to consider the impact of the energy on their bodies, but the warship weapons that were deployed in the formation consumed the energy in the soldiers' bodies. A cold glint flashed past Tang Chao's eyes. The Skull unit had already completed their formation and were prepared to counterattack. When he saw the situation in front of him, blood surged to his face. Bang bang bang. When the ferocious attack suddenly arrived, their minds went blank. He was an outstanding general. Tang Chou did not understand, how could such an outstanding general be reduced to the point of being bought over along with his army? Comparing the standard of a general, Xie Yuan was many times stronger than Aya. The entire Golden Street had lost most of the shops, and only a few were left, swaying in the wind and rain from the explosions. These few shops were the largest businesses in the Golden Street, for example the Suji Worldwide Commerce. They were rich and overbearing, the goods in their shops were of astonishing value, and the construction of their shops were not spared. He Ying was so angry that he trembled. Kill them all! Dust filled the sky, rocks fell like rain, a warship broke out from the ground. The spiderweb-like ground exploded with a loud bang. Xie Yuan roared with all his might, "Attack! Gather! They actually dare!" Chapter 643. The astonishing synchronization rate brought about an astonishing might. It was just 21 men, but they were releasing the aura of a small army. Everyone attack! With that, he turned his face, with a sinister look, he roared at the control room, "Charge! Kill them!" Tang Chou was satisfied, although the second army had lost more than half of their men, but in a head-on clash, the Skull unit was still not their match. The reason why the Swift army was able to achieve such a result was because the enemy had underestimated them, and on the other hand, they had the advantage of defense and warship weapons. Stop it! Quickly stop it! He knew of the battle below, but he did not bide his time, because he had absolute confidence in Tang Tian's strength. In the past battles, Tang Tian had met many enemies that he could not win against, but the final victor would always be Tang Tian. Even if the situation was dangerous, he still chose to bet on Tang Tian's victory without hesitation. To a tyrant, buying a Black Arrow warship was not a strange thing, but it would be strange if they did not buy one. Energy surged into the honeycomb sword cannon, and the swords floating behind him started to light up. Black Arrow warship! But Tang Chou did not care. The moment the Black Arrow warship appeared, he knew that the deciding factor of the battle was not the Skull unit, but Tang Tian. Without hesitation, he once again placed his hopes on Tang Tian. You get what you pay for. The Black Arrow warship was just a small warship, but its price was equivalent to 10 warships, so how could the second army not know of its strength? Even the second army could not afford such an expensive warship like the Black Arrow warship. They were all used by the tyrants to equip their own private guards. The light aura that splashed out lit up the night sky. The energy barrier of the Black Arrow warship trembled intensely, and the sound of the collision could be heard throughout the city. Truly crazy. And if it was a single person controlling it, it required a silver saint. Seeing the stubborn look in He Ying's eyes, little fool was helpless. I will fight for you. He Ying broke out in cold sweat from the sword aura that brushed past him. The thick stone floor was forcefully smashed open by the Black Arrow warship. The intense trembling of the warship caused Tang Tian to become even more excited. Xie Yuan's expression was very ugly. The synchronization rate of these 21 people had reached an astonishing 92%. Tang Tian wasn't upset because of the blood he spat out, but because he didn't seize such a great opportunity. All of Tang Chou's attention was on the Black Arrow warship. The battle between the two experts was so fast that they couldn't even catch a glimpse of it, let alone support and escape. His Excellency had finally appeared. The honeycomb sword cannon was of a higher grade than the one on Qin Yu Ran's warship, which meant that its impact on the body was even more intense. Tang Tian, who had just been injured, was caught off guard and vomited blood from the impact. It was as though they had been injected with chicken blood, all of them focused on piloting the Black Arrow warship, which quickly left the ground. The soldiers seemed to wake up from a dream, but they immediately fell into a frenzy. Nothing made their blood boil more than the leader taking the lead. Damn it! As long as Tang Tian killed He Ying before the Skull unit could no longer hold on, then they would win, if not, they would lose. Little Fool did not care, but curiously tried to sense the honeycomb sword cannon. His delicate little face was extremely cute. Little Fool stared at Tang Tian, who was glaring at him with his veins popping out. The fool did not seem to feel the blood flowing out. His bulging muscles were as hot as steel, releasing an astonishing amount of heat. Under the steam, The entire warship was filled with a dense and pungent smell of blood. Tang Tian sat on the honeycomb sword cannon, his bloodied hands holding onto the handle. He said without a care, "As long as I think it's meaningful." Unexpectedly, Tang Chou chose an order that seemed to be untimely. If it was an outstanding commander like Xie Yuan, they would usually hesitate at such a time. Because they had their own judgment of the situation, and Tang Chou's order that seemed to go against common sense would cause them to struggle. The soldiers of the Second Army then suddenly remembered that they were facing a true tyrant. A tyrant who dared to use a sky-high bounty to wipe out the Golden Rose in one night. A tyrant who dared to use cloud coins to buy 2 armies. But the honeycomb sword cannon is interesting. Shio. Protect Master. When they saw the position of the Black Arrow warship, the entire Second Army perspired in cold sweat. Chance. The sword behind Tang Tian's chair suddenly lit up. If Tang Chou was said to be filled with insight and astonishing judgment, then Tang Tian was said to have the terrifying intuition of a wild beast. Without thinking, he immediately attacked He Ying. But Aya's skull unit did not. At times, being weak had its own benefits. Aya and the rest had not regained their senses from the shock, much less forming their own judgments. They did not even understand the situation in front of them. So when they heard Tang Chou's order to attack with full force, they did not think much and immediately took action. A blazing red blade aura flew out from the 21-men formation, fiercely slashing onto the Black Arrow warship. Previously, the Swift Army's frenzied attack had destroyed all of the warships of the Second Army. When the Second Army suddenly realized that the enemy's warships were threatening He Ying's safety, they realized that they had no warships to support them. Godlike young lad, go go go. Light auras rained down as 100 swords shot out. He Ying had not regained his senses from the sudden turn of events, and it was an extremely rare opportunity. Get closer to me. Bang. Xie Yuan bit down on his lips, his eyes filled with worry, but it was a pity that his entire Swift Army was paralyzed on the ground, without any strength to retaliate. That's right, it was a Silver Saint. The Second Army also had warships, but they were all medium-sized and above warships. All the large-sized warships were not suitable for fighting inside cities, so he used warships. And small-sized warships were expensive, and their usefulness in the battlefield could not compare to large and medium-sized warships. And if it was a battle inside a city, cheap and good-quality warships were the better choice. Fight side by side. A sword aura surged out, but Tang Tian suffered a heavy blow. He spat out a mouthful of blood and lost control of the sword aura, causing it to fly to the side. Bang! Tang Tian leaned back on his chair, his mouth twitched, his face covered in blood revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. Little Fool thought that he had finally convinced Tang Tian, but who knew that Tang Tian would laugh weirdly? Let us fight side by side. The battle between Tang Tian and Xie Fei had frightened them to the point that their faces were white, and they did not dare to come down. 2 of them were unlucky, and were struck by Xie Fei's finger auras, and were injured. Tang Tian knew that the skull unit's all-out attack would not be able to last for long. The appearance of the warship caused everyone to be surprised and surprised. No one thought that there would actually be a warship below. Silver-grade warship weapons were powerful, but the conditions to use them were harsh. For example, the heaven-binding ghost blade, if many people were to use it, it would require 20 soldiers proficient in blade techniques, and the synchronization rate would need to be above 75% to achieve its standard might, and if the synchronization rate was lower than 70%, it would be unusable. Rumble rumble. Screams filled with panic rose and fell one after another. Damn it. Little Fool did not even bother to roll his eyes. As long as the fool appeared, all the peace would be swept away. Tang Tian, who rushed out of the ground, immediately saw He Ying. Idiot. Wait a minute, tyrant. But when they saw Tang Tian, who was covered in blood, stepping on the blood-red footprints, he walked towards the warship step by step. They were dumbstruck. Could it be that the master still wants to fight when he is so heavily injured? And because they were not united in their thoughts, some of the soldiers were bitterly holding on, while the other soldiers were extremely anxious, thinking of supporting their commander. The lack of unity in their thoughts caused their coordination to become even more chaotic. What was worse was that due to the Skull unit's frenzied attacks, the soldiers who had turned to support He Ying were caught unprepared and suffered many casualties. The soldiers of the Second Army who were just about to turn did not expect for the Skull unit to suddenly attack with all their might, and were flustered. When Tang Tian defeated Xie Fei, they all cheered frantically. He Ying's face immediately changed. Kill! Tang Tian held onto the handle tightly, his face twitching twice. The intense shaking of the warship caused his wounds to open up again, and blood flowed out. Everyone immediately woke up. Master? Their first reaction was to turn and support He Ying. 100 swords resonated. Buzz buzz buzz. It was the only chance for them to win. There is no meaning in acting rashly. Little Fool said coldly. A thunderous roar resonated out inside the warship. The warship directly smashed into the rocks above. I made the right bet. The Skull unit who did not have the advantage in strength was actually not at a disadvantage. He Ying used his actions to tell Xie Yuan the strength of a silver-grade army. Tang Tian's face changed. I'm in trouble. So powerful, Little Fool shook his head. He kept Saint Sword Ocean Prison and floated to a seat of the honeycomb sword cannon and sat down. Little Fool's figure was petite and cute. Sitting on the spacious seat, he looked extremely comical and cute. Although the Black Arrow warship was a small-scale warship, but it was a true silver-grade warship. It was loaded with silver-grade warship weapons, and the warship weapons that Tang Tian had requested to be modified were all silver-grade warship weapons. Such a crude and direct entrance made Tang Tian extremely excited. He shouted out excitedly, "Go, go, go!" Tang Tian's expression became even more sinister and ferocious. In a narrow path, only the courageous would win. At that time, it was either you die or I die. Tang Chou, who heaved a sigh of relief, was the first to react. Tang Chou's bearing as a famed general was displayed at that moment. In such an intense battle, victory or defeat would usually be decided 1 second earlier. But they had met Tang Chou, and the moment the warship appeared, Tang Chou's reaction was different from everyone else. He heaved a sigh of relief. He Ying roared, and the 20 elites around him immediately gathered around him. Very quickly, all of their auras merged into one, the energy in their bodies synchronized. Tang Tian, who was covered in blood, sat on the seat of the honeycomb sword cannon. He was rejoicing in his heart. He had specially picked 10 soldiers from the Skull unit who knew how to operate the warship. If not, they would not be able to operate the warship. The Black Arrow warship was a small-scale warship and did not require many soldiers to operate it. Chapter 644. He Ying was about to retaliate, but in the next moment, his expression froze. As if he didn't feel anything, he glared angrily and roared like a tiger. Just how many secrets did that careless fellow have on him? He Ying was very confident in his red sandstorm. Its defensive capabilities were much stronger than normal energy shields, and it was inspired by the sandstorms in the desert. The high-speed rotating airflow could deflect the enemy's attack and increase the defensive power. Adding a large amount of hard and heavy light sand into the storm could make the storm even thicker and harder to break through. What he did not know was that when Tang Tian's honeycomb sword cannon exploded, the emotionless Little Fool who did not care about the matter suddenly had a cold glint flash past his eyes. His body trembled. He knew that if such a monster really appeared on the battlefield, who could stop it? No one could stop them. If every battleship in the fleet could do the same, then no one in the entire sanctum could stop them. Boom! The corner of He Ying's mouth revealed a cold smile. The synchronized energy, under his command, quickly transformed into a red storm, protecting them in the middle. Dense whistling sounds resonated in the night sky. Wave after wave of sword auras, like an endless rain of light, shot out from the Black Arrow warship. Shio! There were only 20 people by He Ying's side, but they were all steel guards that had followed him for many years. Every one of them was an elite of the army. They were very familiar with battle formations. It was definitely not a problem for them to fight 1 against 10. You thought about the pirate war that Bai Xiao had mentioned before. In that battle, Meng Nen seemed to have used the honeycomb sword cannon, and it was rather extraordinary. In just a short 10 seconds, He Ying felt as though a day had passed like a year. It was incomparably long. The defensive power of the Red Sand Tempest was indeed outstanding, but the number of sword auras was too shocking. With such a crazy bombardment, Ying felt an immense pressure. The energy within their bodies was being consumed at an alarming rate. "Everyone hold on!" Ying roared. "The enemy won't be able to hold on for long." Bang! Heavens! Ying forced himself to calm down and maintain Crimson Sand Tempest with all his might. The powerful defensive power of the Red Sand Tempest was on full display at this moment. The raindrop-like sword auras bombarded the Tempest, but did not have much effect. Other than holding on, Ying had no other choice. If the Red Sand Storm wavered even a little, they would be devoured by the torrent of sword radiance, and not even their bones would be left. Ying was extremely confident. Sure, they had some level of skill. From the density of the attacks, it could be seen that the other party's skill was pretty good. But to think that a mere honeycomb sword cannon could kill a silver-grade general, they were underestimating him. The honeycomb sword cannon was usually used to deal with scattered soldiers. Its power was not considered strong, but it could fire a lot of them at once, and the area it enveloped was huge. Little Fool held onto the handle of the honeycomb sword cannon. Tang Tian's angry roars drilled into his ears, but he was indifferent, as though he did not hear anything. Up until now, he hadn't even attacked once. His expression was the same as always, as if the battle in front of him had nothing to do with him. To a silver-grade general like Ying, as long as he revealed a single flaw, he would be able to turn the tables, much less such a fatal flaw. The dense sword auras were like a rain of light, bringing forth a terrifying whistling sound as they pounced towards Ying. Before he finished his sentence, the dazzling sword light struck the Red Sand Storm with a straight and dazzling streak of light. All of the guards clenched their teeth and held on. They had absolute trust in Ying, and at the same time, they believed that the enemy would not be able to hold on for long. Such a crazy attack, no one would be able to hold on for long. A chessboard light appeared beneath Little Fool's feet. The powerful impact surged into Little Fool's body, causing the chessboard beneath Little Fool's feet to suddenly light up. Bang! It shattered into countless of light auras. The Red Sand Storm trembled. Ying and the rest felt a sweetness in their throats, blood leaked out of their mouths, their faces filled with shock. The floating swords behind the seats once again became bright. Tang Tian roared, and the terrifying sword auras surged out once again. The dense sword auras formed a torrent, continuously striking the Red Sand Storm. Ying's face was as white as paper. The heavy sword attack, although they had blocked it, but the Red Sand Storm was also heavily injured. Wave after wave of ferocious energy continued to surge into Tang Tian's body, causing his body to tremble like a sieve, countless of blood arrows shooting out at the same time. A trace of blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth, causing the sneer on his face to become even more bewitching. His mission was completed. When he attacked, Tang Tian had already taken the chance to pounce towards the undamaged honeycomb sword cannon. Wait a minute. Furthermore, although the honeycomb sword cannon could shoot out a shocking number of sword auras, its attack frequency was not high. After every attack, there would definitely be a pause. Usually, the warship had many battle positions, so this weakness was not fatal. But currently, the opponent only had one honeycomb sword cannon, so this weakness would be magnified. Without the obstruction, the sword auras surged forward, destroying everything in their path. Bai Yu hugged his head, his face filled with disbelief. He had heard Bai Xiao talk about how powerful Meng Nan was when using the honeycomb sword cannon, but when he personally witnessed how the honeycomb sword cannon could continuously shoot out a rain of swords without any gaps, all of his common sense was toppled. But they knew that at the moment, they definitely could not panic. Such a terrifying attack, the burden that the opponent had to endure would definitely be astonishing. A swordsman's body was never known for its sturdiness. Ying, who had been bitterly holding on, was ecstatic. That's right, even if the opponent's soldiers could endure such a terrifying attack, the honeycomb sword cannon itself would not be able to endure such a terrifying attack. Tang Tian's roar stopped abruptly. The overheated honeycomb sword cannon exploded into pieces, the dust enveloping the entire battle position. causing Tang Tian to be unable to react in time. In terms of sword laws, Little Fool was a few streets ahead of Tang Tian, and after fumbling around for a while, Little Fool understood the theory behind the honeycomb sword cannon. Tang Tian's unreasonable attack method caused Little Fool to snort in disdain, but the results were good, so he did not appear, and waited for an opportunity. He wanted to roar in anger, but no sound came out. His vision was a vast expanse of white. He Ying had rich battle experience, and was extremely familiar with the current trend of warships. Seeing that the Black Arrow warship only had one battle position gathering light auras, he heaved a sigh of relief. With his deep understanding of sword techniques, the honeycomb sword cannon displayed astonishing might in Little Fool's hands. He Ying, who was about to counterattack, suddenly heard a sharp whistle and jumped in fright. The opponent actually still had people. What made him feel even more uneasy was that he did not sense anything. The opponent's attack did not have any warning. He suddenly quivered. As a famed general, he immediately grasped the main point. If such a scene were to appear on the battlefield. He Ying's face changed. When he raised his head, the rain of swords suddenly converged into one, transforming into a dazzling sword aura. Counterattack. Even the attacks with astonishing destructive power could not shake the red sand tempest, much less the honeycomb sword cannon. Another scalp-numbing whistle came out. Another rain of swords struck the red sand tempest. If one looked carefully, they would realize that the high-speed red sand tempest had countless of dark red light sand inside. All of these energy formed dark red light sand, causing the tempest's might to become even more astonishing. Bang! Warship weapons are not suitable for spirit generals at all. Little Fool's body swayed, although he had channeled the majority of his power into the chessboard, but the remaining impact made him uncomfortable, and he had no strength to attack again. The swords floating behind him lit up at the same time. Bang, bang, bang. "You're here?" Bai Yu was startled and asked subconsciously. "No." A sword aura flew towards He Ying, bringing along a sharp whistle. "Swordsman." Luckily, it was only one sword aura, and was not like the torrent of sword auras, causing He Ying to feel more at ease. He Ying almost jumped up. "Impossible. The Black Arrow warship is a good warship, but it lacks manpower, and is just a wooden frame." Bai Yu did not dare to think further. Just the result of his thoughts was enough to make his limbs turn cold. He stared intently at the battlefield, afraid of missing any detail. Chance. The sword auras continued to strike the tempest. Countless light auras splashed out. The tempest blew the sword auras into pieces, but it was still extremely stable. Before he could finish rejoicing, the whistling sound in the air changed. The originally low and deep whistling sound suddenly became sharp and thin, like an awl drilling into his brain. Seeing that only one battle position lit up with light auras, it further confirmed He Ying's judgment. Meng Nan did not have enough manpower. Warship weapons required a high synchronization rate, and were not something that could be used casually. The tycoons loved to buy a pile of good equipment, but these equipment were usually of little use, and would even be piled up in the warehouse to collect dust. He Ying was too familiar with such corrupt and depraved ways. The honeycomb sword auras struck the wall of storm, causing countless of turbulence, but the wall of storm did not move. The red sand tempest completely crumbled. He had heard of the news of Meng Nan buying a warship, but he did not think much of it. Because Meng Nan did not have enough manpower to unleash the power of a warship, it was not as simple as buying a warship. He then understood why the opponent's attack did not have any warning signs. "Honeycomb sword cannon," Bai Xiao replied. He was excited. Every time he thought about the previous scene, he felt as though he was in a dream. He Ying, whose face was pale white, bellowed, "Be careful." Witnessing the scene from afar, Bai Xiao muttered to himself absent-mindedly, "It's here." The impact produced by the honeycomb sword cannon was huge, and no one could ignore it. He had never seen any small group that could continuously use the honeycomb sword cannon. It was illogical. If a warship, every battle position was like that. He Ying's eyes congealed. Honeycomb sword cannon. Damn it. He Ying suddenly reacted. Only a swordsman with a unique understanding of the sword could use the honeycomb sword cannon to unleash such a terrifying attack. He Ying's mind trembled. There was only one sword aura, but it had a long tail light, and the might and chi it emitted, compared to the Rain of Swords, was many times stronger. At the moment, it was a competition of willpower. Whoever revealed a flaw first would lose. He was filled with curiosity. Xiu. One battle position required around 20 soldiers, and this number matched with the information that Ying had obtained. He only had one thought in his mind: why was the honeycomb sword cannon so useless? The sword auras that struck the red sand tempest were scattered everywhere. The surging sword auras clashed against the red sand tempest. The berserk tempest met an even more berserk enemy. Chapter 645. Shi Sen had just sneaked into the White Sands continent and coincidentally witnessed the first army's attack. Shi Sen immediately made the decision to attack the pirates. Su Abai muttered, "The reason why I sent the continent lord to Meng Nan's residence is because we are at the end of the line and do not have any other reinforcements. And the other reason is that Lei Er Fu mentioned something in Lei Er Fu's letter that caught my attention. Lei Er Fu said that the mysterious man behind him came to White Sands with the most important goal, to find a few families." Su Abai shook his head. Protecting White Sands is Su Abai's responsibility. The entire sacred Saint Galaxy. Ambition, the honorable martial continent's ambition is too big. Su Abai said coldly, "Our White Sands is in the center of the southern region. If there is internal strife, it will definitely affect the entire eastern region. Their plan is extremely ingenious, using Miss Yu Rant's influence. Not only our White Sands, even the surrounding aristocratic families, will be wiped out in one fell swoop. With these bargaining chips, and the pirates appearing, no one will think that the honorable martial continent is the true mastermind behind the chaos in the southern region." The betrayal of the Black Sand Pirates led by Lien Bo-jun became the last straw that broke the camel's back. The pirate allied forces completely crumbled, and the second and third armies took the chance to kill their way out, killing countless people. The new continent lord nodded his head, but he had some misgivings. "I'm afraid that I do not have enough prestige." Golden Rose's boss, single-eyed dark snake Lei Er Fu? Ling Xiao exclaimed. The rest were also shocked. "They have already unified the western region." Su Abai said indifferently, "Their next goal is the entire sacred Saint Galaxy." "How many families?" Meng Nan's background is very mysterious and definitely not ordinary. Su Abai's face congealed. "We have observed his actions and can be said to be extremely daring without any fear. Every time we do not think highly of him, he would always be able to turn defeat into victory, and no one knows what other trump cards he has. Furthermore, that spirit dyad is definitely a famed general. To have such a standard spirit dyad, the power behind Meng Nan is definitely not ordinary. We can only befriend him, and not make him our enemy." Everyone thought that Tang Tian's blood and chi was weak, but after the doctor checked, they realized that Tang Tian's blood and chi was extremely vigorous. Tang Tian pain was not because his blood and chi was weak, but because his blood and chi was too vigorous, causing the arteries and veins to be extremely strong. As soon as these words were spoken, it was as if a heavy bomb had been thrown into everyone's hearts. After a long while, the new continent lord broke the silence and muttered, "I never thought that the honorable martial continent's ambition would be so great." He was at a loss, and suddenly raised his head. "Why does Master Su Abai believe that Meng Nan can protect me?" Beside him, the commanders of the second and third armies had looks of shame on their faces. The continent lord's mansion, the eldest young noble, no, he should be called the White Sands continent's lord, he looked at Su Abai, who had a determined look on his face, and was filled with gratitude. Everyone nodded. "But what benefits does this bring to the honorable martial continent?" Ling Xia did not understand. Everyone was in disbelief. This requirement was not too harsh or too high, but too low. Ling Xia did not say anything. She knew that Master Su Abai's words would cause countless heads to roll and countless families to be destroyed. "If it wasn't for you, this time, indeed not." The one who spoke was the new continent lord, The various continents of the Western region that were destroyed by the Honorable Martial Continent are struggling at death's door. How would they have the strength to protect me? The sudden disappearance of the first army, and before they left, they had asked her to bring the eldest young noble to seek protection from Meng Nan, and then suddenly appearing behind the pirate alliance before the pirates attacked. All of these plans were unfathomable. Seems like he does not care about our foundation. Su Abai heaved a sigh of relief. He had always guessed that Meng Nan's strength was far stronger than the White Sands continent. It was the most logical guess, and also the guess that made everyone relax. Currently, the White Sands continent was heavily injured, and the affairs of the continent were complicated, and none of them could handle it. Everyone was enlightened, and felt that Ling Xia's guess was most likely true. The current Western region was completely swallowed by the Honorable Martial Continent, and the number of continents that were destroyed by the Honorable Martial Continent numbered in the thousands. If Meng Nan was truly a descendant of one of the Western region's continents, then the hatred between his country and his family would be extremely deep. We have no enmity with the Honorable Martial Continent. Enemies of the Honorable Martial Continent? Ling Xia asked curiously, could it be that Mr. Meng was a continent lord of one of the Western region's continents? His words caused everyone to nod their heads. The new continent lord had a more direct understanding of Meng Nan's strength. Meng Nan's actions were definitely not like the descendants of other continents. That kind of unyielding and unreasonable ferocity, that kind of uncaring head-on clash, how was that like a refugee? And Meng Nan's subordinates were all extremely ferocious, with that terrifying spirit dyad. If they were truly in the Western region, it would not be easy for the Honorable Martial Continent to destroy them. Su Abai muttered, he is our most important ally. If there is anything we can help with, we can do our best to help. If they go to the 5 southern island families, they will definitely not be able to enter, so why don't we openly send someone to be our guide, and help both sides communicate? But we will not interfere in the matters between him and the 5 southern island families. This result caused everyone to be dumbstruck. Everyone could only click their tongues in wonder. As expected of a pervert, after losing so much blood, his blood actually became even more vigorous. Amidst Tang Tian's screams, Shirsen respectfully reported the battle that he had gone through, while Huaqing curiously observed his boss. He truly is too young. Then what about the 5 southern island families? The new continent lord asked Su Abai. He knew that his qualifications were shallow, and he had no experience, so he could only rely on Su Abai. Honorable Martial Continent? Why the Honorable Martial Continent? The first army that had disappeared for many days suddenly appeared behind the pirates, and unleashed a ferocious attack. Everyone was shocked speechless by Master Su Abai's conclusion. The sacred Saint Galaxy's myriad of continents had been fighting for tens of thousands of years, and had never been unified before. If there was someone who wanted to unify the sacred Saint Galaxy, how could they not be stunned? Surprisingly, Su Abai shook his head. I don't think so. The new continent lord immediately replied. He saved our lives. Furthermore, he did not seem to care about our White Sands. He said that he had conditions. I asked him for them, and he said that he only needed to borrow our business channels. Ling Xia asked curiously, Master Su Abai, how did you guess He Ying's plan? The battle did not stop because of He Ying's death. Lady Rose saw that the situation was bad, and gave the pirates the signal to attack. Seeing that the White Sands continent was about to be plundered by the pirates, eldest young noble immediately appeared at the encampment of the 2nd and 3rd Army. He Ying and the continent lord were dead. Lady Rose's whereabouts were unknown. The 2 army commanders hesitated for a moment, then chose to surrender. Su Abai nodded his head. On the 3rd day after Lei Erfu's death, I received a letter. It was arranged by Lei Erfu before his death. If he had died, the letter would have been sent to me. If he had not died, the letter would never have been sent. He is extremely crafty. The letter revealed many secrets. Lady Ro is from the Honorable Martial Continent. IOSSSSS. The 5 families lived and multiplied in the southern island families, but rarely revealed themselves, and never interfered with the matters of other families, and could be said to be aloof from worldly affairs. So when everyone heard Master Suabai talk about the 5 southern island families, they were all shocked. She raised her head. This subordinate is willing to be Mr. Meng's guide, and head towards the southern island families. Tang Tian's screams came out from the courtyard. He laid on the bed, his entire body wrapped in white bandages, only revealing his eyes. He could not even move a finger. He was too crazy after the battle with He Ying. In a short period of time, his body had withstood an astonishing amount of energy. He felt as though his body had been hammered countless of times, and was completely numb. When Tang Tian was dragged out of the warship, everyone was shocked. His entire body was soaked in blood, as though he had just been fished out from a pool of blood. There were a few wounds on his body that were still bleeding. If not for that conclusion, and it was Master Suabai who said it, no one would have believed it. Everyone's attention was immediately attracted. The honorable martial continent had made such a big fuss for a few families. It showed how important they were, and they actually did not know about it. Because Meng Nan is the honorable martial continent's enemy. Subai said. The battle had finally ended, and the other good news was that they had found Richard. Everyone's eyes landed on Suabai. The 5 southern island families. And eldest young noble decided to give them a chance to redeem themselves, and requested for them to defend against the pirates. The 2 armies that initially thought that they were doomed were all overjoyed, and fought with their lives on the line, forcefully blocking the pirates. Everyone was startled. Everyone knew about the 5 southern island families. About a few hundred years ago, the 5 southern island families migrated to White Sands. Coincidentally, White Sands was attacked by the pirates, and the 5 southern island families joined in the defense, helping White Sands obtain victory. At that time, the continent lord, for the sake of commending the 5 southern island families, gave them a piece of land in the southern island of White Sands continent, as a place for the 5 southern island families. From then on, they were known as the 5 southern island families. Continent lord, relax, there are some debts that need to be settled. Suabai's expression was cold. Colluding with the pirates, plotting to rebel, these people are evil beyond redemption. Using this chance, we need to thoroughly investigate the honorable martial continent spies. If not, I am afraid that we will not be able to sleep well. Suabai revealed the truth. It was Lei Fu. Ling Xia testified. That was what Mr. Meng said. The pirates immediately fell into chaos. That's right. Lei Fu spent a considerable amount of time investigating a few families, and after that, all of the clues pointed towards the 5 southern island families. Suabai spoke. I have kept this matter in my heart, but did not plan to investigate it, as the strength we have is too limited. But after that, I unintentionally found out that Meng Nan's subordinates were also investigating the 5 southern island families, and I guessed that Meng Nan and the honorable martial continent had a hostile relationship. And the pain was brought about by the blood. Even the commanders of the 2nd and 3rd Army had faces of disbelief. They had thought of Lady Rose's origins, but no one had ever linked her to the honorable martial continent, who seemed to have nothing to do with each other. The new continent lord's eyes lit up. Good idea. Continent lord, the most important thing to do now is to summon the various patriarchs and appease the people. Suabai said. Now that everyone's thoughts are wavering, everyone hopes for peace. Dead silence. Chapter 646. This is the Green Sea of Mist. Ling Xia explained. This mist is extremely poisonous. It can even corrode energy. We need to be careful. Libra constellation, Cancer constellation, Sagittarius constellation, Aries constellation and Aquarius constellation. But what was surprising was that the stream flowed in reverse. It flowed out from the valley below the cliff into the Green Sea of Mist, climbed up the cliff, and continued to climb up another mountain peak, where the peak was enveloped by the Green Sea of Mist. After about 20 minutes, a figure flew out from the Green Sea of Mist at the peak of the mountain, and flew down the mountain. The 5 southern island families migrated here 200 years ago. It is said that at that time, the 13 families migrated to this place, and had a huge split. 7 families migrated to the eastern region, 1 to the northern region, and the remaining 5 families did not want to leave their homeland, so they chose the southern region. Tang Tian did not feel anything, and took out a few things from his bosom. Although he had lost face, but the White Sands Continent Lord had never thought of attacking the 5 families. In Heaven's Road, the Aquarius constellation was a famous tyrant constellation, and although Aquarius martial artists were not the strongest martial artists, they were definitely the wealthiest. The sudden voice caused Ting Ting to raise her head, her eyes revealing a cold glint. Honorable Martial Continent. How did he know that the Honorable Martial Continent is the enemy of the 5 families? In the past, the Southern Islands' green poison mist was also famous, but the scale was not as big. Some people say that the Green Sea of Mist was purposely created by the 5 families, to prevent others from entering. Richard stood by Tang Tian's side, and reported all the details of his investigations. He knew that the boss viewed this matter with extreme importance. He was extremely interested in this dusty piece of history, and spared no effort to investigate, and finally found many clues. All of these clues made him puzzled, and Richard faintly felt that there was an astonishing secret hidden within. Ling Xia's words further confirmed Tang Tian's guess. The Green Sea of Mist was most likely the work of a few generations for it to reach such a scale. Ling Xia only felt a formless pressure, causing her heart to tremble. Mr. Meng Nan's aura was becoming stronger and stronger. In the past, she and Meng Nan were friends, but now, in front of Mr. Meng Nan, she felt as though she was facing Master Sua Bai. Sister Ling. Ting Ting's expression was cold as she shook her head. If Sister Ling comes to our clan as a guest, I will definitely welcome you with open arms. As for other people, I'm sorry, but we don't welcome them. Seeing that Tang Tian was listening attentively, Richard became even more excited. Southern Islands. I might have a way. Ling Xia finally grabbed the opportunity and said. This time, she had volunteered to be Tang Tian's guide, to avoid the cleansing in Baisha City. But that did not mean that her task was easy. Before she left White Sands City, the Continent Lord and Master Sua Bai had specially instructed her to help Mr. Meng Nan. Even her father had made a special trip here. The keepsake in Ling Xia's hands was a jade bamboo board. On it was an engraving of a water bottle. I'll have to trouble you to deliver these items to the various patriarchs. Whether we meet or not, I believe that the various patriarchs have their own ideas. I'll wait here for news. The battleship paused and quickly decelerated. Everyone knew that they had reached the Southern Islands. About 5 years ago, during the previous promise of 10 years, the disciples of the 5 clans sent gifts to the Continent Lord. Because the one who came was a lady, Ling Xia was the one in charge of receiving them. After interacting for a few months, their relationship was not bad, and before she left, she gave Ling Xia a keepsake, saying that if she ever comes to the Southern Islands, she can be a guest at her house. Maybe we can ask her to pass a message inside. Tang Tian laughed. Aquarius constellation. Ling Xia was filled with admiration. Even as an outsider, she listened to Richard's narration with relish. But when she saw the item in her hands, she was stunned. The churning green sea of mist continuously swept up all sorts of strange things. The other strange creature was only the size of a fist. It had a single blood-red eye and pale white teeth that looked like 2 rows of sawteeth. Its body flowed with a black liquid, and when it dripped into the sea of mist, it would transform into black smoke. These creatures appeared in a large group, and even though they were far away, they gritted their teeth at Tang Tian and the rest. Below them, they converged into a dense black cloud, but they seemed to be able to leave the green sea of mist, causing everyone to relax. The dark green sea of mist had no end in sight. Tang Tian did not immediately send people to call Crane and Ling Su over, but decided to take a look first. Tang Tian's gaze landed on Ling Xia. Ling Xia was startled and immediately shook her head. Of course not. But very quickly, Tang Tian started to ponder. He had a Blood Meridian's laboratory under him and knew a little about poisons. She said that on the cliff, there is a pavilion, and beside it is a small stream, and that by throwing the keepsake into the stream, she will receive it. Ling Xia said, Ting Ting. Ling Xia saw who it was, and revealed a smile. At the same time, she heaved a sigh of relief. Richard guessed that the boss definitely knew the secret, but he did not dare to ask. Behind the 5 Southern Island families, the honorable martial continent was faintly discernible. As the strongest overlord, the honorable martial continent had complete control over the entire western region. Tang Tian and the rest quickly found the pavilion. Between the two mountain peaks, there was a bare cliff. The pavilion was extremely old, as though it could collapse at any time. Beside the pavilion, there was a small stream that flowed. Tang Tian finally understood why no one dared to make a move on the southern islands. The sea of green mist was practically a natural barrier. Without a guide, rushing in recklessly, other than leaving their lives behind, there was no use. Richard braced himself and said, "I don't know. What are the 5 families?" Tang Tian suddenly asked. "How do you contact your friends?" Tang Tian asked curiously. The sea of green mist had completely enveloped the southern islands. In the past 200 years, the southern islands had been managed by the 5 families like an iron bucket. Adding the natural barrier of the southern islands, even silver-grade armies did not dare to enter. The warriors of the 5 families were extremely brave, and at that time when White Sands was able to resist the pirates, the 5 families had contributed greatly. Everyone's face changed. The energy undulation just now was shockingly strong. It was as though 2 silver-grade saints were fighting with all their might. Furthermore, Crane and Sagittarius constellation had a deep relationship, while Ling Su inherited the inheritance of Aries constellation. Tang Tian had forgotten the surname of the Aquarius constellation and simply called them the Aquarius family. Tang Tian was filled with anticipation. The 12 ecliptic palaces were all tyrants in Heaven's Road. Every family had a long history, and he was curious what would their main families look like. Yi, Li, Wei, Yu and Zhang families, their insignia are very interesting. The Yi family's insignia is a scale. The Li family's insignia is a crab. The Wei family's insignia is an archer. The Yu family's insignia is an Aries, while the Zhang family's insignia is an Aquarius. How do we contact them? Tang Tian asked. Richard carefully looked at Tang Tian, who was listening attentively. But Richard was slightly worried because they were not going to fight, so they did not bring an army, and only brought Shirsen's 2 small groups. Ling Xia was speechless. She never thought that it would be such a result. As expected of the 12 ecliptic palaces. Seeing that Ting Ting's expression had calmed down, Ling Xia anxiously said, "This is Mr. Meng Nan. I am accompanying Mr. Meng Nan. Mr. Meng Nan is the Continent Lord's esteemed guest, and wishes to visit the 5 families. The 5 families of the southern islands have migrated here, concealed their identities, and isolated themselves from the world. The environment of the southern islands is extremely vile, with barren hills and unruly rivers, wild beasts roaming about, and poison mist everywhere. It is said that when the Continent Lord asked the 5 families what rewards they wanted, the 5 families took the initiative to request for the southern islands, and rejected a fertile land. At that time, the Continent Lord saw that the 5 families were firm, and decided to give the entire southern islands to the 5 families, since the southern islands had no master. The 5 families spent countless manpower and resources, and after 3 generations, they finally had some results. If outsiders were to accidentally enter the southern islands, they would most likely lose their lives. The vile environment became the most natural barrier for the 5 families, and the southern islands became the most mysterious place in the White Sands. But every 10 years, the 5 families will send their disciples to the Patriarch's residence and offer all sorts of treasures. Even the Continent Lord cannot interfere with the matters of the 5 families. The southern islands are a system of their own, and outsiders do not know much about them. Their temperament and customs are also rarely known. Tang Tian nodded his head. That's a good idea. The black spiky life form, with a body of over 200 m long, twisted and turned along with the sea of mist, causing everyone's hair to stand. As long as anything touched it, it would coil around like a snake, quickly binding the other party tightly. The black spikes would pierce deeply into the other party's body. And after experiencing the harsh environment of the southern islands, the current warriors of the 5 families were untouchable in the White Sands continent. Luckily, the disciples of the 5 families rarely went out, and rarely fought with others. Flying out of the warship, the legendary southern islands entered everyone's eyes, but everyone's faces were not good. A green-robed beautiful young lady was filled with joy, but when she saw Tang Tian and the rest by Ling Xia's side, her face was filled with caution. Especially when she saw Tang Tian's Black Arrow warship, her face changed. White bones were constantly being tossed into the air by the churning mist. The sheer number of them was shocking to behold. Suddenly, a beast's roar came out from the depths of the green sea of mist. The intense energy undulations struck out like a hurricane, causing the green sea of mist to become extremely berserk and churn endlessly. Interesting. Ting Ting subconsciously took the things that were thrown over. Richard's investigations were extremely thorough, and he had everything at his fingertips. I wonder if the Bottle family in the Green Sea of Mist is very rich. The 5 Southern Island families hated strangers, and had never heard of the Southern Islands receiving guests. The previous continent lord had once planned to visit the 5 Southern Island families to sightsee, but who knew that he would be mercilessly rejected by the 5 families. At that time, the continent lord had met with a rebuff, and could only drop the matter dejectedly. Ling Xia looked at Tang Tian, waiting for him to make the decision. The bamboo board that was thrown into the stream was sent to the peak of the mountain, and disappeared into the green sea of mist. Sister Ling, are you bringing people to attack my family? Ting Ting's expression became cold. I am the enemy of the honorable martial continent. But along the way, she didn't have a chance to show off. Richard's investigation could be said to be thorough, and his knowledge was profound. He could always find the corresponding content of those inconspicuous incidents in history. Chapter 647. Greetings, grandmother, greetings for grandfathers. Seeing the appearance of the 5 patriarchs, Tang Tian was surprised. He never thought that the 5 patriarchs would be so old, thus he sweetly greeted them. Since he was young, Tang Tian did not have any burden. Towards the elderly, Tang Tian was extremely polite. 5 figures floated down from the sky, and stopped in front of the cloud path. All of them had smiles on their faces. A look of surprise flashed past their eyes. Tang Tian's youth had surprised them. Tang Tian's words immediately made the 5 of them happy. Wei Ting Ting laughed bitterly in her heart. Just at that moment, she suddenly heard a clear voice coming out from the sea of green mist, and was immediately roused. Welcome to the Southern Islands. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The muffled sound came out from the depths of the sea of green mist. If I did not see it with my own eyes, I would definitely not believe that there would be a spirit object that is so compatible with me, as though it was made for me. Yi Feng Lai's expression was intoxicated, but his voice was as cold as ice. Zhang Yingru and the other 4 smiles became even wider. They had never seen Tang Tian before, and only felt that the child in front of them was obedient and polite, and they could tell that he had a good upbringing. The 5 of them were all old people, and they loved this kind of child the most. The landlord does not have any surplus. Yi Feng Lai's cold and calm voice came out. To casually give out 5 spirit objects, the honorable martial continent does not have so much wealth for them to squander. In front of him was a silver spear that flickered with a cold light. Tang Tian's tone was filled with impatience, as though he was extremely dissatisfied with the current situation. His voice rolled out like a torrent, causing the sea of green mist behind Wei Ting Ting to churn endlessly, and was split into 2 by a gigantic force, revealing a wide cloud path that extended far into the distance. The snow-white cloud path, in the dark green sea of mist, was spotlessly white. Ling Xia was dumbstruck. She thought that she had heard wrongly. Was this the same Iron Blood Overlord who had killed countless of people and fought bloody battles without retreating? Of course it is. Richard immediately said, giving 1 is enough. Giving 5 truly too extravagant. Li Yutao was the only female out of the 5 patriarchs. She said solemnly, these spirit objects are completely different from the sacred Saint Galaxy's spirit objects. They are more like the honorable martial continent's spirit objects. Which soul object was not theirs? Both of them felt their hearts ache. Outside the green mist sea. It's amazing. Yi Fenglai's eyes flickered with radiance. His appearance was bold and powerful, but in reality, his thoughts were meticulous and he had always been insightful. He fiddled with the item in his hand. It was a silver scale that was extremely exquisite and small. What was surprising was that it was emitting a strange fluctuation. The others nodded. Wei Da's words were what everyone was thinking. Besides, we also need something to change the current situation. What 12 ecliptic palaces, what conflict of interest? At this moment, he had thrown everything beyond the 9 heavens. In any case, she had never seen it since she was born. Even if the White Sands Continent Lord personally came, he would definitely not receive such treatment. The patriarchs of the 5 clans gathered together, each of them wearing an incomparably solemn expression. Although the 5 clans were as close as a family, such a gathering of family heads would only occur when something extremely important had happened. Don't worry, we'll replenish our manpower later. In her hand was a small and exquisite silver shield. The surface of the silver shield was embossed with a crab pattern. She caressed the patterns on the surface of the shield. The faint undulation caused the energy in her body to involuntarily respond. Aya, it's still a little kid, how can the family feel at ease letting him come out alone? Li Yutao was the first to ask. Then let's meet. Zhang Yingru said, open the doors and welcome our esteemed guest. Extravagant? Tang Tian regained his senses. It's not extravagant at all, one for each family. Richard could not help but ask, boss, isn't our expenditure a bit too much? The 5 families and the Honorable Martial Continent had fought for so many years, but they were not exterminated and were extremely familiar with each other. No one knew better than them what methods the Honorable Martial Continent had. Shursen was stunned, boss. Suddenly, Tang Dun thought about his mother's gentle gaze and his warm palms. Seriously, it's not easy for such a young child to go out. We need to choose some intelligent bodyguards. He's so stupid. Honorable Martial Continent. Wei Da sneered. Although the Honorable Martial Continent spirit objects are the best in the Sacred Saint Galaxy, but compared to these spirit objects, they are still lacking. Tang Tian felt that it was good, although he was not very smart, but his intuition was sharp. The care and concern of his 5 grandparents made him feel a warmth that he had not felt for a long time. Shursen and Richard almost spat out blood. The 5 families had a long history and strict etiquette. The disciples and juniors were all well behaved, and when they saw the 5 of them, they would tremble with fear and be extremely careful. Wei Da's archery attainments were profound, but he did not have the calmness of an archer, and his temper was like fire. That's right. Richard was the first to agree and snorted, just those 5 spirit objects can buy an entire continent. And it is definitely not a small continent. Your noble side is too arrogant. Yu Xianji's usual unhurried tone caused everyone to become silent once again. The recent situation in the southern islands was extremely bad. They never thought that their performance would be seen by the 5 old men and would actually be criticized. Wei Tingting looked at the 5 patriarchs in a daze, her face filled with shock. She had thought that the 5 families would agree to let them enter the southern islands, but she never thought that they would receive such treatment. The 5 patriarchs went out to welcome them at the same time, the misty sea opening the door, the disciples guarding the cloud path. This was the highest form of etiquette for the 5 southern island families. One for each family. Yi Fenglai closed his eyes, as though he was immersed in the beautiful undulation. The other 4 also had smiles on their faces and cupped their hands towards Tang Tian at the same time. Disciples dressed in different colors flowed over like flowing water. They separated into 2 sides of the cloud path. Richard felt that he was in a state of confusion. Richard had long experienced the boss's extravagance, but the amount of money he had spent today still made him feel shocked. Everyone else laughed. It was true, no matter how generous the Honorable Martial Continent was, they could not take out 5 outstanding spirit objects as bait. Welcome our esteemed guest. The world was not only filled with darkness and blood, it was not only filled with open and veiled struggles, it was not only filled with deceit, there was also light and warmth, and the simple care that came from the bottom of one's heart. Seeing that Tang Tian was surrounded by the 5 old men and old ladies, he would occasionally raise his innocent face and answer them cutely. Richard and the rest were completely petrified. The sudden care was like a ray of sunlight that pierced through the clouds. He had obtained a silver bow, the Wei family's archery was passed down through generations, and upon obtaining the silver bow, he became excited. He thought about Ghost Claw, the silent and stern figure, and the care and expectations he had for himself. It did not matter how much it was, warmth always healed the heart. That's right, that's right. Ling Xia felt that the upper limit of the word tyrant in her mind had been refreshed. The sacred Saint Galaxy was not heaven's road, the spirit objects here were rare, and for such high-quality spirit objects, all of them were priceless. The 2 of them were not worried that the 5 Southern Island families would reject them. What a joke, 5 spirit objects, and all of them were high-grade spirit objects. Luckily Su Jin was not present, if not, his eyes would immediately turn green. Richard had seen many spirit objects at his son's place. All of them were provided by the boss for his son's research, but the grade of the 5 spirit objects were much higher than those spirit objects, and all of them were of extraordinary quality. The obedient young man in front of me, Zhang Yingru's voice was trembling. The legend of the past had always been recorded in the history of the various families. This legend had never been proven. The 13 families had also spent countless of effort, and even sent people to infiltrate the honorable Martial continent, but the information they obtained was always vague, as though it was just a legend. Ling Xia did not say anything, but the expression on her face showed that she was equally dissatisfied with their treatment. Zhang Yingru raised his eyebrows and laughed. "Esteemed guests have come, we are late, please forgive us." After the thunder, countless of disciples shouted in unison. The other 4 patriarchs all stood up at the same time. What do you guys think? The one who spoke was an old man with white hair. He was Zhang Yingru, the patriarch of the 5 families Zhang family. He held onto a silver vase, as though he was afraid that it would fly away. Quickly come in, you must be hungry, I made you wait for so long." Everyone became quiet. Why were the 13 families being chased by the honorable Martial continent? Other people might not know about it, but how could they not know? This guy, when was the last time something like that happened? Yu Xinji said slowly, "Look at the insignia on it, the Aries Yu family, from the start till now, this Aries insignia has never appeared anywhere else. The Aries silver spear, there are no such coincidences in the world." Richard's expression froze. In his heart, his boss was strong, tyrannical, decisive, and ruthless. No matter where he was, he would be a hero. The unfamiliar warmth caused Tang Tian to be in a daze. Tang Tian turned and shouted at Wei Ting, "Hey, are you going to meet your patriarch or not? If not, I'll leave." Ling Xia, who was by the side, had a distressed expression. Wei snorted. "If not, why would those assholes from the honorable Martial continent think of ways to kill us?" I'm afraid the honorable Martial continent had already received the news. Humph, the honorable Martial continent's research on spirits suddenly had a breakthrough, most likely because of that. She suddenly turned her head and looked at Tang Tian. Her thoughts were clear, although the 5 spirit objects were priceless, but it was definitely not enough for her 5 grandfathers to treat them with such respect. Along the way, he had been as resolute as steel. He had been burning. He had been shouting unwillingly. He had been struggling and fighting. Unknowingly, he had already gotten used to the continuous battles, used to the danger, used to the cold blades, and used to the salty taste of blood. Could it be a trick of the honorable Martial continent? Liu Tao was hesitant. The relationship between people could be complicated and intertwined with each other, but it could also be simple. His nose felt sour, but he allowed his smile to blossom even more brilliantly. No one felt that Tang Tian's dissatisfaction was wrong, even Wei Ting felt the same. "Is it?" Tang Tian asked casually, his expression showing that he did not take Richard's words to heart. Throwing away the benefits, Tang Tian's smile became even more pure. Could it be that the ancestors of our 13 families that went missing did not die, but went to another place to spread their branches? Stupid and stupid. Chapter 648. Before he finished speaking, a loud rumble resounded, and everyone's expression changed drastically. Not long ago, they finally had a breakthrough. Annoyed, Tang Tian threw out a bronze artifact. Scram! The others were envious and were also trying to think of a solution. Yi Lao Er's method was definitely not going to work. Yi Lao Er was still a man of integrity. After he obtained the soul object, he guarded the door as a door god, helping Tang Tian block the others. Yi Lao Er's strength was valiant. There were only a few people who could beat him. Meng Nan was a thorn in Lady Ro's side. If not for him, their first target would have been successful. Meng Nan's background was mysterious, he was strong, his style was tenacious, his wealth was robust, and he did things without restraint. She had just set up a trap, and Meng Nan was about to come to the southern islands. Wasn't that a heaven-sent opportunity? No one would pay attention to the southern islands. This was an opportunity. Madame Ro let out a soft sound as her beautiful eyes lit up. What is it for the 5 patriarchs to come out to welcome us? All of the generals present revealed fanatical looks. They were the backbone of the honorable martial continent, and were extremely loyal to it. At this moment, Madame Ro's figure was exceptionally tall in their eyes. Their faith was incomparably firm. Lady Ro closed her eyes and pondered. When Madame Ro saw the army that was gathered, she couldn't help but be overjoyed. Madame Ro's lips twitched, but she didn't say anything. She had done what she could, and the rest was up to fate. She did not understand battle formations, so she could not personally command. All she could do was set up and boost morale. Only the light. We await your triumphant return. Lady Ro bowed respectfully, without a hint of arrogance on her face. An Aries constellation bronze star treasure flew out. Lady Ro, who had just concealed herself, upon hearing that Meng Nan was also coming to the southern islands, and bringing very few people, her heart was moved. Good chance. If Meng Nan entered the southern islands, wouldn't he be able to kill him as well? All the soldiers roared in unison. Their faces were filled with incomparable fanaticism. The honorable martial continent had 2 targets in the White Sands continent. The gentle and soft voice made people's hearts itch, but everyone present stood ramrod straight with solemn expressions, not daring to relax even a little, just like those old-fashioned soldiers. Only their black trench coats and the bright red skull pattern on their backs indicated their identity as pirates. If this guy was still alive, he would have to take responsibility for this result. He didn't expect this guy to die. His luck was pretty good. In order to stabilize the morale of the army, Lady Ro had to help him apply for a pension. When Master Su lost his life, she knew that the situation could not be reversed, so she set her sights on the southern islands. The White Sands continent had just stabilized, and with the complicated matters, Su'a Bai's army placed more attention on eliminating the remaining pirates. Meng Nan, do you dare to come out and fight with me? The thin-skinned Yi Lao heir changed his method. Wasn't he just trying to make himself known? Does your father know how much you flatter him? However, the boss was too gullible. When the last general walked out of the room, Lady Ro sat back on her soft chair, her face showing signs of fatigue. Yu Qingyi ran in front of Senator. Only then did Shursen understand that she was talking about him. Shursen felt a bit of admiration. These old soldiers did indeed have some hidden injuries in their bodies because they lacked medicine back then. He did not expect this guy to be able to see through them with a single glance. Tang Tian felt that his recent leisurely life was pretty good. He enjoyed the peace very much. His first goal was to control the White Sands, and make it the honorable martial continent's fulcrum to enter the southern region. If he could not control it, then he would destroy it, and cause the White Sands to descend into chaos, and then the chaos would spread to the entire southern region, causing the various continents of the southern region to descend into chaos, splitting and exhausting the strength of the various continents. The Li family's 4 sisters' dessert skills were top-notch. Yi Lao Er was extremely pleased. He carried the treasures and left. The scout reported respectfully, yes, Ling Xia acted as a guide. She has a good relationship with Wei Ting Ting from the southern islands. Meng Nan handed a few things in, and not long later, the 5 patriarchs came out to welcome him. Shursen felt that the price was slightly high, but to be able to heal the hidden injuries in his body, he was still happy. Wei Ting obtained the spirit object, but everyone was still watching as they did not understand the situation. But Wei Hao also obtained one, and all of the young disciples' eyes immediately turned red. We cannot let the Wei family take all the benefits. Everyone's spirits were roused. The first-class loyal martyr was the highest reward for sacrificing a soldier, and most importantly, his family would receive the best care. They were all soldiers of the honorable martial continent, and were secretly disguised as pirates, doing shady business in the dark, and the honorable martial continent would definitely not acknowledge their existence. Tang Tian spent the past 2 days comfortably. He did not hide anything, and told them everything he knew. After that, the 5 patriarchs started to discuss behind closed doors, and did not come out for a few days. "It's been hard on you," Lady Rose said warmly. Tang Tian could not stand his eagerness. "I have never heard of Sagittarius constellation being so thick-skinned. How can he be so thick-skinned?" Tang Tian, who was defeated through a bronze star treasure to Wei Hao, "Don't appear tomorrow." Seeing the boorish-looking burly man in front of him blinking his bright eyes with a fawning look, Tang Tian said helplessly, "Old Wei, I am not thirsty at all." "Not thirsty? Then are you hungry? My skill in roasting deer is rather good," Wei Hao said with a flattering look. The dessert was extremely delicious, and Tang Dun almost swallowed his tongue. "Brother Meng, drink some water. This is mountain spring water that I brought from afar. It is very sweet." Out of the 5 families, only the Zhang family was left. Zhang Nanyan walked up confidently. "I have a business deal." Although she had suffered a huge loss at Meng Nan's hands, Lady Ro was extremely confident in the battle. "That's right, only they can save the world. Only the honorable martial continent can bring peace to the world. We will definitely win." All of the generals shouted. "That is a spirit object. When a man dies, the lamp will go out. Do not gossip," Lady Rose said indifferently. Lady Rose's expression was impassioned. Her words were different from her usual gentle and soft voice, and had a sonorous tone. Just as he left, the 4 sisters of the Li family carried fresh and piping hot desserts into Tang Tian's room. Not long later, the 4 sisters each took a spirit object and left happily. Out of the group of people, one person stood out. "I have just received news. Master Su's pirate group has been completely annihilated." The servant stuck out her tongue and kept quiet. Seeing that Lady Ro was tired, she immediately ran over and gently massaged Lady Ro's shoulders. Lady Ro stood up and stared at the soldiers in front of her, and said solemnly, "Everyone, do not worry, the higher-ups will not forget everyone's sacrifice and sacrifice. Everything that we have done is for the sacred Saint Galaxy. The sacred Saint Galaxy has been in conflict for too long, heroes have stood side by side, and wars have never stopped. How many innocent people have died in the chaos of war? How many families have been destroyed? The blood has flowed for too long, and it is time for it to end. Only with a strong ruler, only with the light of the honorable martial continent shining in every corner of the sacred Saint Galaxy, can the world be at peace, and people can live and work in peace." Lady Rose's face revealed a look of sorrow and sighed. "I never thought that Master Su would actually meet with misfortune. The heavens are jealous of him. But his contributions will not be erased. I will report it, and help him obtain the title of first-class loyal martyr." The fleet that was hiding in the darkness quietly moved, revealing their sinister looks. Only with blood and fire can we restore peace. Burn the bodies of our brave men. With blood and fire as swords, we can break through the dark clouds and see the light. Only the light can illuminate the land. The backbone of the pirates were all carefully selected elites of the honorable martial continent, and their strength far surpassed ordinary pirates. They saw that the situation was unfavorable, and thus chose to conserve their strength. The 5 types of laws were interconnected, and had many variations. Tang Tian could not be bothered, since he had said what he needed to say. How they chose was up to them. "I do not dare to alarm them, they are too far away, and this subordinate is unable to see clearly." The scout lowered his head, his heart trembling. Lady Ro was an important intelligence officer, and quickly gathered the pirates that had been infiltrated by the honorable Martial continent, and quietly gathered them at the southern islands. She wanted to take the chance when Su Bai and the rest reacted, and take care of the 5 southern island families. Although time was tight, but she arranged everything in an orderly manner. Although the pirate alliance was defeated, but the few pirates that had been infiltrated did not suffer much losses. After so many years, the honorable Martial continent had suffered countless setbacks in the Green Sea of Mist. But the blood and sacrifices were not for naught, and how to break the Green Sea of Mist had become one of the most important research projects of the honorable Martial continent. The reason why the 5 southern island families were hard to conquer was not because they were strong, but because they had operated the Green Sea of Mist for so many years, and the current Green Sea of Mist was filled with poison, with all sorts of desolate beasts and venomous insects. But the strongest were the 5 top martial artists of the 5 southern island families in the past 200 years. Using their bodies as a guide, they were connected by laws. They entered the southern islands? Is there any news of Master Su? Lady Rose suddenly asked. Master Su was the skinny and tall man, and when she left the White Sands, she did not travel with him. If she sacrificed herself, her family would be properly taken care of, and they would not have any worries. The second goal was to destroy the 5 southern island families. The good situation was destroyed. Master Su is too useless. If not, why would Lady Ro need to clean up the mess? The servant muttered, her face filled with disdain. Yu Qing came to Tang Tian's door, ignoring Yi Lao Er's murderous gaze. He spoke out, your esteemed subordinate has an old injury, I have some medical knowledge and can give it a try. Wei Hao was Wei Tingting's brother. Ever since he knew that Wei Tingting had obtained a spirit object from Tang Tian's hands, he ran over every day to fawn over her. Since bronze treasures were not worth much, he casually gave one to each of them. Lady Rose sat on the black soft chair, her warm and smooth arms supporting her chin, her mouth hung a charming smile. Lady Rose was helpless. She did not expect that her own comrades would be so useless. She had thought of He Ying's defeat, and thus plotted a plan to lure the pirates into the continent. She did not expect that Master Su would leave a hidden danger, and before Lei Fu died, he left a clue for Su Bai, and at the crucial moment, the allied armies were attacked by Su Bai. Allying with the pirates, they wanted to borrow their strength, but did not expect Lien Bo-jun to betray them. Lady, we will definitely win. The servant beside her waved her fists excitedly. But, ever since he casually gave Wei Ting a bronze treasure from Sagittarius constellation, Tang Tian's side became lively. The expected punishment did not come, and the scout heaved a sigh of relief. Lady's temper was much better than Master Su's. Yi Lao stood outside Tang Tian's door, shouting for 2 hours. He was full of energy, just his voice alone could cause the roof tiles to fly. Now that the first goal had failed, the only thing that could be accomplished was the second goal. I will definitely not appear. Wei Hao grabbed the bronze treasure, turned and ran. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.